Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads, they pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com. And welcome back, Free Speech TV. This is the last 3 days of the Fall Pledge Drive. Today is Wednesday. We have today, Thursday, and Friday, 3 more days, including today, to try to get back up to where our goal was. And we are behind. And that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the network. It's not a good thing for you if you enjoy watching this network or this program on this network. I don't think we're at the point where things will start to go away, but we're moving in that direction. And we're certainly not at the point where things can continue to expand and, get Free Speech TV on more platforms and all that kind of thing. So my humble request to you is if you have not yet donated to Free Speech TV, and it is a donation, and it does keep this network going, please call now, 877-378-8669, and make a contribution for whatever is comfortable for you, whatever you can afford, as your way of saying, yes, I am a progressive, I do care about these issues, I do want to see this country moving forward, and, let me help out, let me pitch in, number one. And number two, if you can't afford to make a contribution, you can still help this network. If we had twice as many viewers right now, we could do this pledge drive in half the amount of time, right? Because there would be twice as many people donating, and we'd hit our goals twice as fast. So if you can get just one other person, now you might have to talk to 4 or 5 people, maybe even 6 or 8. I don't know what it'll take, but maybe only 2 or 3. I guess it depends on, your friends and neighbors and relatives and how politically active they are and whether they have the time during the day to watch television and all those variables. But if you can get just one person in addition to yourself regularly watching this show on this network, then, when the winter pledge drive comes around, we'll be in much better shape. And that doesn't cost a penny. Typically email is free, and most people can make phone calls for free, and you can certainly talk to people in person for free. So there are a lot of ways to help out Free Speech TV, and I know that you want to help Free Speech TV. I know that you care about this network. It's why you're watching it. And, now we need your help. With a $30 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV Vote Mini Kit. That's the sticker and the button. With a $72 contribution, you get a copy of the newly released, newly updated edition of The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight by me, updated, just this year. All brand new data on the climate change stuff, and it's a great book. This book has inspired a number of people whose names you would recognize to jump into the environmental movement. It's one of the books I've written that I'm the most proud of, and I think you'll like it. And if you already have a copy, or if you have one of the older editions, well, if you have one of the older editions, you'll want the new edition. But it's also a great gift. This is a great gift, particularly for young people, college students, high school students. As an introduction to environment, politics, culture, progressive worldview. It's a great book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. Ancient sunlight, of course, refers to oil, right? Sunlight 200 million years ago or 300 million years ago, landing on plants, the plants using that sunlight to fuel photosynthesis and make more plant, the plants eventually getting crushed under the earth and turning into coal or oil or gas. And, now we burn this. So it's the last hours of fossil fuels really is what the book is about. That's with the $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt and the button and the sticker. With a $240 gift, and these are these numbers, rather than being round numbers, it's 240 because it's divisible by 12 months, which is $20 a month. 120 divisible by 12 months, it's $10 a month. So you can make it as a monthly pledge for the next year or as a just outright gift. $240 gift, you get the hoodie kit, and that's the Free Speech TV sweatshirt, made in the USA, a zip-up sweatshirt with a hood. Something these kind of things are really useful in places like the Pacific Northwest, where it doesn't really seriously rain all winter, but it kind of mists all winter. Hoodies work here actually, although sometimes you need a raincoat too. But anyhow, you get that plus the sticker and the button. With a $360 gift, you get the Free Speech TV Vote Our Future pack with the t-shirt and the hoodie and the button and the sticker. With a $480 gift, you get the all of the above package. You get the t-shirt and the sweatshirt, but you also get my book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, and you get the sticker and the button. So it's all of the above. And with the $1,000 gift, come to Portland, Oregon, and I'll take you to lunch. And a fine time will be had by all. Right? In fact, we're scheduling some of these right now. So thanks so much for your contribution. If you've made one, and please chip in now. Thanks.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
My friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you, and it's Wednesday, so it's time for Middays with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan on the line with us. There is large breaking news. Congressman Pocan, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.
And for those of you who may be tuning in for the first time, Congressman Pocan is the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and he represents the state of Wisconsin in the U.S. House of Representatives. Pocan.house.gov and Rep. Mark Pocan on Twitter. Congressman, a couple of quick things. Number one, this woman who is represented by Michael Avenatti, her name is Julie Swetnick, has come forward and said that she learned of efforts by Kavanaugh and his friend Mark Judge, quote, to spike the drinks of girls at house parties I attended with grain alcohol and or drugs so as to cause girls to lose inhibition and their ability to say no. She said it was usually, quote, it was usually a girl that was especially vulnerable because she was alone at the party or shy. She said, quote, Kavanaugh and his buddy Judge had done this so that girls could be gang raped in a side room or bedroom by a train of numerous boys. Quote, I have a firm recollection of seeing boys lined up outside rooms at many of these parties waiting for their turn with a girl inside the room. These boys included Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh. And then she says in 1982, I became the victim of one of these gang or train rapes where Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh were present. Shortly after the incident, I shared what had transpired with at least two other people. During the incident, I was incapacitated, unable to fight off. I believe I was drugged using Quaaludes placed in my drinks. This is serious stuff.
Yeah, which is why the Midwest smell test is totally in play here. I mean, if they really want to get to the bottom of this and have a third-party verifier that nothing happened, you have the FBI do investigation. And the fact that they won't, the 11 old white men on the Senate committee who instead now have to bring in someone to ask questions to show any kind of diversity on this issue, what they need to do is do what would make perfect sense. They'd probably need a week, tops 2 weeks, to have the FBI actually do the job of the FBI, which is find out all these allegations. Instead, you have a hearing on Thursday and force a vote on Friday. I think sends a huge message to so many people in this country what is really going on here. And this is brand new information, right? We've got to do this right, not fast, and all they seem to care about is the speed of getting this done.
Yeah, it's really quite remarkable. So we've got that, going on in the Supreme Court. There are other things. Oh, by the way, the Violence Against Women Act. The Republicans, I understand that you've participated in the House. You have 168, as I recall. Let me check this out. Yeah, 163, Democratic members in the House. 0 Republicans signed on as co-sponsors of the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. This was first passed in 1994 in the wake of Anita Hill, in the wake of her hearings. On the Senate Judiciary Committee, Grassley, Hatch, Graham, Cornyn, Lee, and Cruz have all voted against it in the Senate. What's going on with this?
Yeah, no, so now that's part of the appropriations bill that we will pass this week. But my first session, 3 sessions ago, this came up. We had to do a discharge petition. One of the few, I'm sorry, not discharge petition. They had to come and get votes from across the aisle. One of the few times that's happened. And, of course, Boehner got in trouble for it. So it is amazing that the Republicans consistently try to oppose this type of legislation. In this case, it will get done with this package in the House this week. But it just shows all the problems they have around these issues. And, you can look at either the makeup of the committee and see the problem. You can look at how they're dealing with this issue. You can look at the crazy remarks from people like Tucker Carlson telling victims that they're part of the problem, which is, again, insane at many levels. This is the disconnect that they don't understand what they don't understand on this issue.
Yeah, and this morning we had now Susan Collins quoting Alex Jones with the latest conspiracy theory about how, it's all phony baloney. It's amazing. So let's pick up some phone calls for you. It's Middays with Mark, our entire hour, Congressman Pocan, taking your calls at 202-808-9925. And to start out, Jordan in Durham, North Carolina. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, Congressman Pocan, how are you doing?
Hey, very good, Jordan.
My question or comment, what are your thoughts about? Do you think my question? Do you think that the women that accuse Kavanaugh, do you think they are going to testify?
Well, Jordan, so far we only know the one woman is going to testify on Thursday, and then to add to this whole circus. The president's going to meet with Rod Rosenstein, and we'll see what happens there. But, that is another conversation we can have. But, now that the fact there's a third woman coming out, if they don't find a way to have those women officially recognized by this process, whether it be an FBI investigation or actually a hearing before they take a vote, I think they make a huge mistake. You can't just ignore people who say they're victims. And, if someone says someone stole something from them, you're going to go, you follow up on it. You don't question the person who claims something was stolen from them. And this is exactly what they're doing. They're questioning the victim. So, Jordan, I think one person will be heard, and depending how that transpires, we'll watch on Thursday. But there's a whole lot more that now just has come up. We'll have to see how the Republicans in the Senate respond.
David in Columbus, Ohio, listening on WGRN. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Congressman. My hope is with the progressives. They're the only ones that seem to talk about reducing defense spending. And it's never in any of the campaign literature. It's never on any of the topics that people talk about when they're campaigning. I'd like to hear that become more of a important issue when we're spending $670 billion on defense. It takes away all the money from the other domestic spending, and I think there's plenty of things to spend money on, but more weapons is not one of them. And this just benefits the global banking elite who invest in this stuff. And I know this is a major problem, but is there a way of getting the Democratic Party to make that part of their cornerstone for their philosophy?
Yeah, David, I think the best way to address it, in my opinion, is if we take the majority, Democrats are in charge. There are many people who talk about defense spending, including the ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, Adam Smith. has talked about a number of different times the excesses in defense spending. I think that's our best way to try to deal with it. I think right now the campaign issues that people are bringing up to us is what we're bringing back to them. So it's, healthcare and prescription drug prices is one, good paying jobs and kind of infrastructure is another, and the culture of corruption in Washington. So since those are the three that we're hearing the most, that seems to get what's talked about the most. I'd add Social Security and Medicare to that as well. But we can actually deal with it should the majority change. Then we have to work with the grassroots groups on this to make sure that that's where we find monies for healthcare and education and all the things that, as progressives, we care about. We definitely spend too much in that area.
David, thank you for listening to our progressive affiliate there, or our, Pacifica affiliate there in Columbus, Ohio. Russ in Hickory Hill, Illinois, listening to WCPT. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Pocan. Let me get this straight if I can get. Orrin Hatch is introducing a bill, did I hear, or he wants the Supreme Court to rule that, like, Donald Trump's being investigated on a federal level, that you cannot drag him into New York at the same time. State has no power to, charge him with anything. It's only federal. It's like they're trying to protect him from New York, putting him in jail. This Orrin Hatch is off the rails because they told our senator here, Durbin, they want to bring back the filibuster if they lose the power, and he told them no. Have you heard anything about Orrin Hatch trying to stop state power from taking Donald Trump to court?
Yeah, so Tom and I just were talking about it. It was new to me. I think Tom probably has more information because there's a lot flying. This is probably the last week we're in the House. The Senate will probably stay because he needs to keep Democrats from campaigning. So a lot is flying, but there is this measure, Tom. I don't know if you want to address it.
Sure, I just do it very quickly. This was not legislative. This is at the Supreme Court. There's a case before the Supreme Court that was brought to the court the day after Kennedy announced that he was going to step down. So it'll be heard by the new court that presumably would have Brett Kavanaugh on it. And this case will, there's a 150-year-old exemption to the Fifth Amendment double jeopardy laws that says that you can be tried for the same crime twice if once is in federal court and once is in state court. And that's the thing that they're using to make sure that they can go after. For example, if Trump pardons Manafort, New York State can then still prosecute him. If Trump pardons Flynn, D.C. can still prosecute him or wherever the crimes were committed. And Orrin Hatch filed a 44-page amicus brief with the court saying that this needs to be struck down immediately. So that's what's going on. So,
which is pretty amazing, right? The fact that they are so tone deaf.
Yeah, let's overturn 150 years of judicial precedent here. It's amazing. And it'll radically cut the power of federal prosecutors, by the way, if they do that. So Congressman Mark Pocan is with us taking your calls for the hour. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program. You can check out his website at pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at @RepMarkPocan. The number is 202-808-9925.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And we have calls lined up from all over the country. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan. And welcome back. Carolyn in Los Angeles, listening on KPFK. Hey, Carolyn, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, thanks so much, and thank you, Representative Pocan. I closely follow what has been going on with the U.S. involvement in Yemen, and we were told on September 6th that a resolution would be introduced in September invoking the War Powers Resolution and giving us a privileged vote to pull the U.S. out of the current bombing campaign on Yemen, and I'm wondering where that stands and what movement's happening on that.
Yeah, Carolyn, great question, and I think I have great news. I usually don't get to say that when I talk about Washington, so thank you. A lot of credit goes, I think, to Ro Khanna, who's really taken the lead in the House, but it's Ro Khanna, Adam Smith, who's ranking on Armed Services, hasn't worked with us on this before, Elliot Engel now, too, on Foreign Affairs, who has not worked with us before. We think the whip, Steny Hoyer, is going to be with us on this. We're finalizing that now. but we think we have the impetus to put this out there and have really strong support. I think the continued abuses that have happened there are continuing advice, to the Saudi-led coalition, the refueling, the weapons coming from the United States. It's just culminating enough that I think we now have more and more people in the appropriations bill. We have a resolution I put in around Yemen, stayed in, and will be passing by the entire House of Representatives. This issue is finally, and I do say finally because, so many people have died already from this, is getting some attention. So that will be introduced this week. Obviously, since we're not going to be in sessions after the election, there's going to be a little gap, unfortunately, to deal with it. But the good news is we finally have some real leadership and a diverse mix of support for this, and I think we can have a real debate, and there are Republicans who agree with us as well on this issue. I feel much better than I did months ago when we tried this the first time.
We have about a minute and a half till we're going to hit a break, Congressman. Not really quite enough to bring a caller in. Can you, for people who might not know what we're talking about, Yemen has gotten so little coverage in the mainstream media. You want to give us a little primer on what's going on?
Absolutely. So there's a war between a Saudi-led coalition and Yemen, and somehow Iran gets brought in under President Trump. But the bottom line is there's unbelievable devastation happening in Yemen, probably only second to Syria. And at times they're trying to take out the port where 70% of the food and medicine come into the country. People are at the risk of famine, like hundreds of thousands of people at risk of famine because of what's going on. And at first we were supposedly involved with just refueling jets. Then it came out that we have people on the ground advising. And then most recently, a bomb that killed school children was a U.S.-made bomb. It just keeps coming out that we have far more involvement than Congress has ever given any authority to. And we're trying to get Congress back involved because it is our job. If we're going to be that involved in a conflict where so many people are dying, and again, the second worst on the planet, maybe only to Syria, we need to have Congress to say. The good news is we've got some Republicans agree with us, and now we have some leadership in this area on the Democratic side agreeing with us. I think we're maybe at a point to try to deal with the issue.
Yeah, this is truly a humanitarian disaster. I think it was the Houthis are Shia or related to Shia, and they were rising up against the government, and the Sunni government and the Saudis are putting them down. Is that the?
And there's just a whole bunch of innocent people killed
in the middle,
and starved to death in the middle.
Yeah, it's terrible. We'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan in just a moment. It's Middays with Mark right here on the Thom Hartmann Program, coming up on 22 minutes past the hour. Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads. They pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
/podcast. Welcome back. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls on the issues of the day. Steve in Phoenix, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning, Congressman Pocan. Spoke to you last a couple of years ago. I'm the Madison native and family ties to your native Kenosha.
Oh, awesome.
Anyways, it's good to speak to you again. What I'm concerned about right now is the messaging. I live in a 55-plus community out here in the Valley, and 70%, maybe more, of these people are Republicans. And I feel we really need to start targeting the 55-plus communities. Secondly, There's attack ads on TV portraying Kristen Sinema as a socialist, and I guess they're doing this across the country. And what I think the Democrats should do is embrace this and turn it around and say, and do their ads on TV and explain, yeah, we're socialists, and this is what it does. It provides Social Security, Medicare, the Postal Service, the VA, unemployment insurance, and infrastructure. What say you, Congressman Pocan? Thank you, sir.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Well, first of all, I am seeing when I travel around the country now, helping out on people who are running for Congress, healthcare seems to be the lead issue. Social Security very quickly follows up. So we certainly are messaging to the 55-plus crowd that we need to not just preserve but strengthen Social Security, and there's a lot of changes that we could do and need to do as Congress, a lot of pieces of legislation that we've introduced. So we are addressing it, and I think that will be very helpful for the very reasons you brought up. Second is I don't like to take their debate. What real people talk about is not socialism. What real people talk about is whether or not they have health care for their family, whether or not they can afford to take a vacation and pay for their mortgage. They talk about common sense sort of stuff. So they're not landing any punches right now, we can see, on this socialism debate. So rather than take their debate, which they would love to have us do, and get sidetracked from why we're winning because there's a bunch of corruption in Washington. The Republicans are completely complicit with what's going on with Donald Trump. We're winning because they're trying to take away health care from people, and they're afraid they're going to lose access to health care for their family. And we're winning because we're talking about Social Security and other economic core issues for families. So I just want to keep us talking about that. It seems to be working right now in the races I'm seeing around the country. But they're trying to make a word that shouldn't have a negative connotation, But if we jump to their debate, then we're off the message that real people are talking to us about as we're on the campaign trail.
We have just a minute to the break. Brenda in Fort Hood, Texas, you have a quick one?
Yes, the Judicial Committee, what is going on? They're supposed to be judicial, doing something about justice, and I've got my two senators, good grief, they were lawyers before. They should know this stuff that, yes, there should be an investigation. But can the ethics people, and thanks for taking my call, Tom, and Representative Pocan, can the ethics people look into those senators that are not being very judicial?
Well, I don't think it's going to be the ethics committee, because usually it has to be something you've done wrong, and I guess this is in the discretion that they're saying. I just think they're showing, as you said, Brenda, tremendous ignorance of what it means to be a victim and how you treat a victim and how you give credibility to what they're saying. And instead of having the FBI do, which should be a no-brainer, right? Have the FBI investigate it, and then you've got a third-party validator one way or the other. By doing what they're doing, they're looking like a bunch of out-of-touch old white guys who are going to force another white guy into the Supreme Court. And I think in this country today, this doesn't pass any test whatsoever. So they're showing how out of touch they are and why that they're likely to lose a lot of seats this fall because people are tired of it.
Yeah, I think they're willing to lose the House and Senate for even several political cycles in exchange for getting the Supreme Court for 40 years.
There's no question. I mean, the way they're pushing this, that's what they're doing. Yeah. Either they're the most ignorant people on the earth, which I don't think they are, or they're doing.
I think this is the Koch's long game, and any of these senators or members of Congress who lose are going to have cushy jobs when they get out. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Days with Mark, Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls. Pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan. We'll be back right after this. And welcome back. Free Speech TV. This is the last 3 days of the Fall Pledge Drive. Today is Wednesday. We have today, Thursday, and Friday, 3 more days, including today, to try to get back up to where our goal was. And we are behind. And that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the network. It's not a good thing for you if you enjoy watching this network or this program on this network. I don't think we're at the point where things will start to go away, but we're moving in that direction. And we're certainly not at the point where things can continue to expand. and get Free Speech TV on more platforms and all that kind of thing. So my humble request to you is, if you have not yet donated to Free Speech TV, and it is a donation and it does keep this network going, please call now, 877-378-8669, and make a contribution for whatever is comfortable for you, whatever you can afford, as your way of saying, yes, I am a progressive, I do care about these issues, I do want to see this country moving forward, and, let me help out, let me pitch in, number one. And number two, if you can't afford to make a contribution, you can still help this network. If we had twice as many viewers right now, we could do this pledge drive in half the amount of time, right? Because there would be twice as many people donating, and we'd hit our goals twice as fast. So if you can get just one other person, now you might have to talk to 4 or 5 people, maybe even 6 or 8. I don't know what it'll take, but maybe only 2 or 3. I guess it depends on, your friends and neighbors and relatives and how politically active they are and whether they have the time during the day to watch television and all those variables. But if you can get just one person in addition to yourself regularly watching this show on this network, then, when the winter pledge drive comes around, we'll be in much better shape. And that doesn't cost a penny. Typically email is free, and most people can make phone calls for free, and you can certainly talk to people in person for free. So there are a lot of ways to help out Free Speech TV, and I know that you want to help Free Speech TV. I know that you care about this network. It's why you're watching it. And, now we need your help. With a $30 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV Vote Mini Kit. That's the sticker and the button. With a $72 contribution, you get a copy of the newly released, newly updated edition of The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight by me, updated, just this year. All brand new data on the climate change stuff, and it's a great book. Excuse me, this book has inspired a number of people whose names you would recognize to jump into the environmental movement. It's one of the books I've written that I'm the most proud of, and I think you'll like it. And if you already have a copy, or if you have one of the older editions, well, if you have one of the older editions, you'll want the new edition. But it's also a great gift. This is a great gift, particularly for young people, college students, high school students. As an introduction to environment, politics, culture, progressive worldview. It's a great book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. Ancient sunlight, of course, refers to oil, right? Sunlight 200 million years ago or 300 million years ago, landing on plants, the plants using that sunlight to fuel photosynthesis and make more plant, the plants eventually getting crushed under the earth and turning into coal or oil or gas. And, now we burn this. So it's the last hours of fossil fuels, really, is what the book is about. That's with the $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt and the button and the sticker. With a $240 gift, and these are these numbers, rather than being round numbers, it's $240 because it's divisible by 12 months, which is $20 a month. $120 divisible by 12 months, it's $10 a month. So you can make it as a monthly pledge for the next year or as a just outright gift. $240 gift, you get the hoodie kit, and that's the Free Speech TV sweatshirt, made in the USA, a zip-up sweatshirt with a hood. Something these kind of things are really useful in places like the Pacific Northwest, where it doesn't really seriously rain all winter, but it kind of mists all winter. Hoodies work here actually, although sometimes you need a raincoat too. But anyhow, you get that plus the sticker and the button. With a $360 gift, you get the Free Speech TV Vote Our Future pack with the t-shirt and the hoodie, and the button and the sticker. With a $480 gift, you get the all of the above package. You get the t-shirt and the sweatshirt, but you also get my book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, and you get the sticker and the button. So it's, all of the above. And with the $1,000 gift, come to Portland, Oregon, and I'll take you to lunch. And a fine time will be had by all, right? In fact, we're scheduling some of these right now. So thanks so much for your contribution, if you've made one, and please chip in now. Thanks.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. It's Middays with Mark, Congressman Mark Pocan, taking your calls for the hour. And Brad in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Can you hear me?
Just fine, Brad. You're on the air.
Oh, okay. I'm not hearing it real loud. Great. My first observation is, why not call the Republicans the RAPE publicans? I think that would be very apropos. My other comment relates to this. Are you really so sure that the Republicans will... It looks like they're going to lose the House. But second of all, I think if you lose the Senate by too much, the removal of President Trump becomes a certainty. You have all of those investigations that are going to lurk out of the Democratic House aimed at the top of the Republican leadership in Congress and the complicity they have in the whole Russia collusion conspiracy thing. And so I'm wondering, do they really want to lose that badly to get a Supreme Court seat? Because if the president comes in 2020, we're talking about expanding the court, possibly, yes, and I'll take my answer off air, unless you have other questions that I might want to bring.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah. So Brad, I mean, what we're saying is the way they're acting clearly shows a disconnect with where the public's at, and with the election coming as close as it is, seems like they really want to get this Supreme Court seat for life over what they're doing. But let me just, if I can answer it a bit indirectly. I am really worried about what's going to happen with Rod Rosenstein, because if they, on Thursday, don't fire him and wait till after the election, if you get rid of Rod Rosenstein, he is in charge of the Mueller investigation. He has the direct oversight. They can do anything they want. We may not ever have a Mueller investigation, and that's what they're up to. That's why they're trying to go after the prosecution stuff through the Supreme Court case. That's why they've got all this other stuff in front of us. So people need to get active with groups like Move On and other groups that are part of a big coalition that are ready that if Rod Rosenstein gets fired or Mueller gets fired, that we're going to have rallies across the country with millions of people involved, because it is a direct threat. It is a direct threat that they want to stop that from happening. And even though we can have investigations on emoluments clause in Russia and other things, this is an important investigation, and to fire people to get rid of it is something that I think is a very possible and maybe even likely scenario. So we have to be very, very ready for that. So I want to make sure that's on everyone's radar screen, because Rosenstein is the direct supervisor of the Mueller investigation, and that's why this matters so much.
Right, and he has to sign off on every single warrant and every single grand jury effort. And the guy who will replace him is on record as saying that he thinks that if Mueller starts looking into Trump's finances, he's gone too far.
And they could bury the investigation. All this work,
this could
clearly
kill the whole
is
thing.
done in a productive way.
Yeah, it's amazing. Harry in Horseshoe Bay, Texas. Harry, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good day, gentlemen. Congressman Pocan, Mr. Hartman. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, Tom. I have not done much sailing with all the rain we've had here in Texas the last month, so I've had a chance to do quite a bit of reading. Democracy in Chains, Nancy McLean, Injustices, Ian Millhiser, The Most Dangerous Branch, David A. Kaplan, and We the Corporations by Adam Winkler. This Supreme Court we currently have, as Senator Sheldon Whitehouse describes in his September 4th, 2018 Kavanaugh confirmation hearing opening statement as prepared for delivery, is what everybody needs to be focusing on. You have hinted at this just in your last caller, okay? This court is already extremely biased towards amicus brief by friends of the court, and the average citizen has not got a chance. I was graduated from the United States Merchant Marine Academy in 1977. I've spent my entire life reading Code of Federal Regulations with regard to international shipping, foreign entering clearance documents, so I know how to do research. So I'm that 1% of the population that is an oddity. I'm very highly educated in many ways. So my concern is that if we get Kavanaugh on this court, now we have a 6-4 libertarian slanted subject to the, who was the outside Federalist Society, okay, Supreme Court. This is extremely alarming to me.
Right. What's the question for Congressman Pocan, sir?
Well, my question is, how can we, as concerned citizens, mobilize enough effort to stop this nomination dead in its tracks?
There you go. Congressman?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, Indivisible, Move On, DFA, PCCC are all groups that are working on this, Public Citizen, many others. I shouldn't start naming them. They'll exclude a bunch, but those are some of the groups that have been very active. Get active with them right now on what's happening. So you're doing things in your locality as well. You know, call your U.S. senators. Ted Cruz is up in your state, Harry, and, you know, I know we don't often expect very much of him, but the more pressure he gets, the better it will be. And if people call their senators across the country, the more it'll matter. But, you know, you're right. You put him in for a lifetime term, and you've got a hardcore conservative in there who was the only person who said you can't go after a president while they're in office. Well, I think we can, you know, this guy is very transparent, Donald Trump. I mean, we know how he operates. This is what it's all about, and many of the outside conservative groups and the Koch brothers just want a Supreme Court conservative justice no matter what. They're willing to do almost anything to get there. We have to really hold them accountable, and that may mean getting active at election time between now and November 6th. Means doing a whole lot more than maybe we do from our chair comfortably at home. We have to be as active as possible, and this is the time to do it.
Stephen in Santa Fe, New Mexico, listening on 1260 KTRC. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, Congressman, I find it ironic that we've got a president with a much more sordid sexual background that gets away with everything, just like the Republicans. Constantly, they bully us. They bully anybody that differs with them in their political ambitions, and it just seems ironic to me. Do you think that presidents in the future need to be vetted more and be as responsible as we're trying to make our Supreme Court justices?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Stephen, I think, you know, the true tragedy of Donald Trump becoming president has been he's the most unpresidential president, I think, in history I can think of. And if this is the new bar, I mean, there's a reason why everyone in the world thinks they can run for president next time. I'm not saying anything about the various people looking at it, but, you know, when you have a president who's got a past like Donald Trump, you know, right now he really can't credibly say a lot on the Supreme Court, so others are doing the work. But this is a real problem. He got laughed at the UN yesterday. I mean, for saying how great he is. You know, there's so many things. We don't have a vetting process formally here. It's the elections. But, boy, we better make sure that we raise the bar back up before we elect another president, because if it's not, you know, there's a movie called Idiocracy that if people haven't seen and you really just want to veg out and watch, it's a good movie. But what's scary is it's going to make you think a little bit about where we are in history, because it shows the future, where we've devolved to. Donald Trump is definitely a big step towards that development.
Oh, my goodness. David in San Francisco, listening on iHeartRadio's AM 910 there in San Francisco. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hello.
David, you're on the air.
Oh, great. Yeah, I've run into a phrase that's used in law. It's duty to care. And apparently the Supreme Court a couple of years ago decided that police have no duty to care for the citizens. I think it had to do with a mugging, and they actually watched a mugging and didn't help the person that was being attacked. So when you start looking at legislation that I'm just walking in the door, so I hope you can hear me better. When you start dealing with legislation, is the congressman aware of this ruling that says that the government has no duty to care? And can we turn that around so that we actually get not only taxation with representation, but that we get protection from things like bank fraud on a massive scale, or identity theft seems to be. If the NSA is tracking everything, how come the NSA doesn't help with this identity theft? Can we get the government to care, or should we recognize that they don't care?
Yeah, David, I think your point that it seems like most of the legislation we're doing these days is not done in the public interest, essentially, is very true, and we have to get back to that. And I think that's why there is so much interest in around the country about what's happening. People are extremely displeased with Washington, and in many states they're extremely displeased. Maybe not in California, but I hear you.
Yeah. That's something I need to go look up. That's fascinating stuff. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us taking your calls for the hour. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program. You can check out his website at pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at @RepMarkPocan, MarkPocan. And we'll be back with more of your calls for the Congressman right after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, Middays with Mark edition. And welcome back. Sheila in Talent, Oregon. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan. Thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV.
Let me take you off speaker. Yes, I don't know if Congressman Pocan, and thank you, Tom and Congressman Pocan, for being here. If you, any of your constituencies are indigenous peoples, I don't know if you're aware, probably are, of Justice Kavanaugh's hostility towards tribal laws and Native peoples. Are you? Am I on the air?
Yes, you are.
There's a whole list of things he's bad on.
Yeah, this is the Native Alaskans have now presented a petition to Lisa Murkowski saying no to this guy.
The National Congress of American Indians has asked for him not to be confirmed. There is a large group of indigenous women for a multitude of reasons. There's a beautiful open letter in the High Plains Reader, I believe it is, about this and about many other subjects. And I just want to state also that he has also shown in two of his quotes an extreme hostility to affirmative action. And if anything is shown as that affirmative action should not be going away, it's the present condition in this country with the racist hostility that I'm hearing from the extreme right and those people in power. And I'd just like to read two quotes. This was a part of it was in a article that he had written in the Wall Street Journal while a case, Rice versus Cayetano, which was about Hawaiian indigenous people's rights, in which I believe he did win. And he also, I remember he clerked for Kennedy, and Kennedy was also very hostile to indigenous laws.
Sheila, we're running out of time. If we want to get a response from Congressman Pocan, we need to let him speak, okay? Congressman?
Yeah, there are a lot of different reasons, Sheila. You brought up a couple. I would argue I'd throw in labor issues for working people and a whole bunch of other things, too, that should be enough to merit a vote against him. But with this Senate, that's not. So I think the two things that are most interesting right now are the hearing on Thursday and now additional women making these accusations. Are they going to do the right thing and have the FBI investigation and hold the vote at a different time than Friday? And then secondly, I still think it seems we've lost the conversation about did he perjure himself 4 times during his testimony, and what does that mean? I mean, we can't have a Supreme Court justice who also happens to be a liar. So I think, that is an issue that's kind of gone by the side but should still be looked at. That also, so in addition to what you said, the merits of what his positions are on issues, let's add those two and let's not do this.
Dianne Feinstein this morning just released a I don't know if it was FOIA or how she got it, but a memo that Kavanaugh had written back when he was working in the Bush administration that completely contradicts sworn testimony he gave to the Senate Judiciary Committee back in 2004, I think it was, when he was being considered for the D.C. clerkship. So she's found another lie of his. I think we're up to 5 now, where he's lied under oath to Congress.
And with all the stuff this week, this is a pretty fast and loose track ride, perhaps.
Yeah, amen. We'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan right after this. It's 49 minutes past the hour, coming up on 10 minutes before the hour. Congressman Pocan's website is pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at @RepMarkPocan. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads. They pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. It's Middays with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls as we continue through the day here. Michael in Imperial Beach, California. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning, Tom. Good morning, Representative Pocan. Representative Pocan, it seems to me that the Koch brothers' ultimate goal is to create a constitutional crisis resulting in a constitutional convention to rewrite the Constitution of the United States. If that happens, who is entrusted with writing the new Constitution of the United States? The Federalist Society, the Supreme Court, the House, the Senate, or the states? Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, so Michael, I think what you're saying is, you've got a hypothesis, and I think you're right in that we know all those entities are trying to fund this, and I think we're, Tom, 3 states away from doing it, which is pretty scary because they think they can get their way that way. I don't know if all the rest leads to that. I don't think there's that much conspiracy out there. I think much of what they're doing is just general incompetence. They elected someone who has made this more of a cult than a political party, and he's operating in a very odd style. But I don't think that this is all totally orchestrated. But I do think you're correct. They would love to do just that. I just don't think this is directly related.
Okay. John in Hillsboro, Oregon. John, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Here's a generic question. Probably both of you have kind of said it before, but I never did hear it, so I'm just being a little selfish. What if there's a red wave and not a blue wave? What if the Democrats are completely slaughtered on the Senate and the House of Representatives? Everybody thought Hillary was going to win, didn't do it. So with all this gerrymandering and Jim Crow activity going on, and apathy, of course, it seems as though I'm really sweating this one out because I have this really gut-level feeling that the Republicans are even increased their margin in the House, has increased in the Senate. Game over. Thank you.
Yeah, John, I understand your fear for many reasons because they've been working at what they've been working at for a very long time, and they've already manipulated many of the structures to do just that, including things like gerrymandering, like you mentioned. However, the polling on all these special elections, the polling we're seeing, and this is not the polling from 2 years ago where it didn't work because the turnout wasn't there. We actually have had 44 state legislative special elections since Donald Trump got elected that have flipped from Republican and Democrat. So we have something actually to verify, this on. I don't think that's the case. Even though Donald Trump says it, I think he says it for the base. but it's not real. And even I had today, Mark Meadows was in my office, and we had a nice conversation, and he kept referring to when we take the majority, because I think many Republicans are realizing that that is a very potential possibility. So I don't think there'll be a red wave based on any kind of scientific criteria, and it is different than the scientific polling criteria from 2 years ago where they just were off on turnout.
Musrath, I believe it is, in Montclair, California, listening to us on KPFK. Musrath, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, good morning, Congressman. My question is, why can't we prevent the forgery on the credit card by having a picture and fingerprint on the credit card?
I don't know an answer to that, because I think this is something that I don't think federal law tells them, exactly what they have to have on a credit card. So could they do that? Maybe. The problem is if you have a picture and a fingerprint, you couldn't use it probably via the phone or maybe the internet. It might be difficult. So I don't know if there's a federal fix to it, but I could maybe see a few issues why that adds some complexity to the use of a credit card.
Lewis in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, morning, Tom. Morning, Congressman Pocan. I'm wondering if you could just clarify what was going on with you co-sponsoring that Eliminate ICE bill, and then you said you wouldn't sign it.
Yeah, so this is real simple. They try to take a bill up with 4 days, and we had 3 sponsors. Well, actually, take it back. We had 3 main, I think we had 8 or 9 sponsors. You need 218 votes to pass something in Congress. I mean, there was no real intention to pass that bill. You need to build organizational support and other things to do that. So we just said, you're doing a gotcha vote. We're not going to play your game. We very much believe there's a problem. In Wisconsin over the weekend, 88 people were arrested in a raid, and they went out of their way not to give us any information ahead of time. They told us it wasn't a raid, pure BS. Trying to get them in my office right now for a meeting. So I have plenty of reasons that I have not changed my opinion at all of how we need to deal with ICE, and I'm going to work towards that. But to assume that in 4 days with 8 or 9 sponsors, they really wanted to pass a bill, it wasn't true. They were just trying to do a gotcha. We weren't going to go there, and so we all decided, including with the outside groups, not to take their bait.
That's interesting. And now they're all running around saying, see, he's just a hypocrite. He wouldn't even vote for his own. That's amazing.
And we just, but I think they weren't ready for us. Most people in Washington would never do that, right? We're like, no, we're not going to play your game.
Right.
And yet we're going to keep fighting for this.
Amen. So we have just a minute left here, Congressman. Your thoughts on the coming week, on where we're at right now politically, on what people can and should be doing?
Wow. I think a lot's going to happen Thursday, right? It's going to be a circus in this town between the Kavanaugh hearings and the Rosenstein meeting with the president. All I know is they want to take your attraction away from the one thing that matters right now, and that's the elections on November 6th. That is where we can affect the change that we need to. So just don't let them distract you. That's where we have to keep focused. If you really want a blue wave, we have to be out there to work really hard on it. But keep plugging away. It's within grasp, but we got to work for it.
Yeah. Very quickly, do you think that there's going to be any successful pushback on the Republican voter suppression efforts?
They refuse to put any money, and we could have a whole long conversation on that. But so far, we're not seeing some things that would have been signed that'll make it nearly as bad as 2 years ago, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and we still have a ways to go. Congressman, thanks so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, as always.
Great talking with you. Congressman Mark Pocan, his website, pocan.house.gov, and you can tweet him at @RepMarkPocan. Up next, Professor Kathleen Hall Jamieson. Trump won because of Russia.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising. We're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads. They pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com. And welcome back, Free Speech TV. This is the last 3 days of the Fall Pledge Drive. Today is Wednesday. We have today, Thursday, and Friday, 3 more days, including today, to try to get back up to where our goal was. And we are behind. And that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the network. It's not a good thing for you if you enjoy watching this network or this program on this network. I don't think we're at the point where things will start to go away, but we're moving in that direction. And we're certainly not at the point where things can continue to expand and, get Free Speech TV on more platforms and all that kind of thing. So my humble request to you is if you have not yet donated to Free Speech TV, and it is a donation, and it does keep this network going, please call now, 877-378-8669, and make a contribution for whatever is comfortable for you, whatever you can afford, as your way of saying, yes, I am a progressive, I do care about these issues, I do want to see this country moving forward, and, let me help out, let me pitch in, number one. And number two, if you can't afford to make a contribution, you can still help this network. If we had twice as many viewers right now, we could do this pledge drive in half the amount of time, right? Because there would be twice as many people donating, and we'd hit our goals twice as fast. So if you can get just one other person, now you might have to talk to 4 or 5 people, maybe even 6 or 8. I don't know what it'll take, but maybe only 2 or 3. I guess it depends on, your friends and neighbors and relatives and how politically active they are and whether they have the time during the day to watch television and all those variables. But if you can get just one person in addition to yourself regularly watching this show on this network, then, when the winter pledge drive comes around, we'll be in much better shape. And that doesn't cost a penny. Typically email is free, and most people can make phone calls for free, and you can certainly talk to people in person for free. So there are a lot of ways to help out Free Speech TV, and I know that you want to help Free Speech TV. I know that you care about this network. It's why you're watching it. And, now we need your help. With a $30 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV Vote Mini Kit. That's the sticker and the button. With a $72 contribution, you get a copy of the newly released, newly updated edition of The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight by me, updated, just this year. All brand new data on the climate change stuff, and it's a great book. Excuse me, this book has inspired a number of people whose names you would recognize to jump into the environmental movement. It's one of the books I've written that I'm the most proud of, and I think you'll like it. And if you already have a copy, or if you have one of the older editions, well, if you have one of the older editions, you'll want the new edition. But it's also a great gift. This is a great gift, particularly for young people, college students, high school students. As an introduction to environment, politics, culture, progressive worldview. It's a great book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. Ancient sunlight, of course, refers to oil, right? Sunlight 200 million years ago or 300 million years ago, landing on plants, The plant's using that sunlight to fuel photosynthesis and make more plant. The plant's eventually getting crushed under the earth and turning into coal or oil or gas. And, now we burn this. So it's the last hours of fossil fuels, really, is what the book is about. That's with the $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt and the button and the sticker. With a $240 gift, and these are these numbers, rather than being round numbers, it's $240 because it's divisible by 12 months, which is $20 a month. $120 divisible by 12 months, it's $10 a month. So you can make it as a monthly pledge for the next year or as a just outright gift. $240 gift, you get the hoodie kit, and that's the Free Speech TV sweatshirt, made in the USA, a zip-up sweatshirt with a hood. Something that these kind of things are really useful in places like the Pacific Northwest, where it doesn't really seriously rain all winter, but it kind of mists all winter. Hoodies work here actually, although sometimes you need a raincoat too. But anyhow, you get that plus the sticker and the button. With a $360 gift, you get the Free Speech TV Vote Our Future pack with the T-shirt and the hoodie, and the button and the sticker. With a $480 gift, you get the all of the above package. You get the T-shirt and the sweatshirt, but you also get my book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, and you get the sticker and the button. So it's all of the above. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, Oregon, and I'll take you to lunch. And a fine time will be had by all, right? In fact, we're scheduling some of these right now. So thanks so much for your contribution. If you've made one, and please chip in now. Thanks.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thom Hartmann here with you. Boy, there is so much going on. It's hard to know where to start. First of all, Julie Swetnick, 55, has come out. She has held multiple clearances for work done at the Treasury Department, the U.S. Mint, the IRS, the State Department, and the Justice Department. This Koch brothers funded network that's running these ads in favor of Judge Kavanaugh keeps saying, investigated 6 times by the FBI. Well, she has been too. And she has these secret clearances and stuff. She says during the years of 1981 and 1982, she learned of efforts by Kavanaugh, Mark Judge, and others to, quote, spike the drinks of girls at house parties I attended with grain alcohol and or drugs so as to cause girls to lose inhibitions and their ability to say no. She says certain girls were targeted by those boys. Quote, it was usually a girl who was especially vulnerable because she was alone at the party or shy. She goes on to say that Kavanaugh and his buddy Mark Judge did this, quote, so that girls could be gang raped in a side room or bedroom by a train of numerous boys. She says, and I quote, I have a firm recollection of seeing boys lined up outside rooms at many of these parties waiting for their turn with a girl inside the room. These boys included Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh. And then she says in her affidavit, this is a sworn affidavit. She can go to jail if she is lying. And in this affidavit that she has submitted to the Senate Judiciary Committee, which they seem to be ignoring, she says in approximately 1982, I became the victim of one of these gang or train rapes where Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh were present. Shortly after the incident, I shared what had transpired with at least 2 other people. She says, during the incident, I was incapacitated without my consent and unable to fight off the boys raping me. I believe I was drugged using Quaaludes or something similar placed in what I was drinking. So there you have it. This is Michael Avenatti's client. Meanwhile, just the spectrum of stuff that is going on is just absolutely amazing. Justice Kennedy, whose son, by the way, worked at the bank, Deutsche Bank, that loaned $1 billion to Donald Trump, Justice Kennedy, the day after he said that he was going to retire, a case was brought to the United States Supreme Court that theoretically had nothing to do with anything. It's called Gamble versus the United States. And in this case, this guy who was being prosecuted for tax fraud at a state level, as I recall, I haven't read the full case and I don't have it in front of me, but my recollection is that he was being prosecuted both for state tax violations and federal tax violations. And in this case, he's arguing that he shouldn't be able to be allowed to be prosecuted by the state if he's being prosecuted by the feds. Now, what this would mean for Donald Trump is that if he were to pardon Paul Manafort, he can only pardon him of federal crimes. So he pardons him of the federal crimes. The state of New York, which is where many of these crimes took place, Connecticut, some of the others, these states could come forward and they could prosecute Paul Manafort, even though he'd been federally pardoned. And everybody has been talking about this. Everybody's been kind of, winking and nodding about this. Well, this case, Gamble, before the United States Supreme Court, which will be heard in the next term that starts next month, this case would make it impossible for the court to, it would make it impossible for a state to prosecute Trump or anybody else if a pardon had been put into place. So, it's pretty amazing stuff. On the line with us, this is another story here. How did Trump become president? Professor Kathleen Hall Jamieson is with us. She's the director of the Annenberg School for Communications Public Policy Center, and she's the author of a brand new book, holding it in my hand here, Cyber War: How Russian Hackers and Trolls Helped Elect the President. And Dr. Hall, or Dr. Jamieson, or Hall Jamieson, welcome to the program.
Yeah, call me Kathleen, please. It's nice to be with you.
Thank you, Kathleen. So tell us the story. How do you know that had Russia not intervened in the elections, Donald Trump would not be president?
Well, I can't say that I know it. I can say that I have a very strong case for it, and as a result, I surmise it from the case. First, there was enough troll activity that was well enough aligned strategically with Trump's interests. That is, mobilize evangelicals and Christian Catholics, mobilize military and veteran families, suppress or minimize African-American voting and voting by Sanders supporters, and switch anyone who was not inclined to not vote to switch over rather than to Hillary Clinton over to Jill Stein. And that the content of the trolls was evocative, based on prejudice, fear, anger, the sorts of things that create viral dissemination and create effective contagion. And as a result, everything they had was well aligned to influence people. We don't know whether it did in the 3 key states because we don't yet have the data knowing which computers received the material. The platforms know that. If they would tell us that, we could know how strong the case is. The second part of the case is the hackers. The hackers did create a massive impact. We saw hacked content in our news on an ongoing basis.
You're talking Hillary Clinton's emails and John Podesta's emails?
John Podesta's, not Hillary Clinton's emails, but the emails of her staff. John Podesta's emails, DNC traffic. They also hacked the DCCC, Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. In the process, they got voter turnout models, and they got the complete model for the turnout for the Clinton campaign, which would increase the likelihood, if they were skillful, that the troll content would have gone to the right places. But more importantly, when you're asking how do I know what I know, they changed the media agenda. They not only affected the Clinton campaign, Debbie Wasserman Schultz resigns at the Democratic National Convention, they made it harder to consolidate the Sanders vote because of the content that was hacked and leaked and then judiciously massaged by the Republicans and magnified by news. The hacked documents that were released very strategically on October 7th blunted the impact of the Access Hollywood revelations about Donald Trump by putting a competing Hillary Clinton narrative in news and eliminated from news the other element that was at play that day, the report of the national intelligence community that the Russians were behind the hackers. So by releasing that content on that day, they changed the news agenda, took a news agenda that otherwise would have had two anti-Trump stories. Russians did the hacking and Access Hollywood tape, and instead created a balance with Hillary Clinton's private revelations versus Donald Trump's private versus public behavior. And then, since they dripped it out throughout October, they changed the media agenda to create more negative messaging against Hillary Clinton. We see a drop in her perceived qualification during that time period that's difficult to attribute to anything else. And hacked content was used in the last two debates in ways that made Hillary Clinton look bad. We also picked that up in a survey.
And we know it was the Russians who hacked this content.
We know that the national intelligence community agrees that it was, yes.
Yeah, that's pretty damning. What do we do with this?
Well, first, we ask what was the role of each of the players, and are they doing enough to create disincentives for other countries to do it and to protect us from it? And there we've got all sorts of dimensions at play. I mean, the government has indicted individuals who are responsible for the hacking and for the troll content.
Right, these 12 Russians.
The Russians, and then this is Mueller in both cases, and they have levied through Congress, and the president did sign it, they have levied sanctions against them, and they've got them indicted, so if they can ever get their hands on them, they'll try them. But that hasn't stopped them. They're still meddling in our system, so we can say, well, there's an effort there, but that hasn't done it yet. Then secondly, what are the platforms doing? We could spend 2 hours on how difficult it is for the platforms.
By platforms,
to
you mean Facebook, Twitter, et cetera?
Yep,
okay.
Yep. But the first thing they can do is prevent it from coming in. Right. And the one thing that they have done is tried to find a way not to let them advertise on the platforms. And they're doing that by making sure that they verify that the person who's buying the ads has a U.S. address. Now, that doesn't eliminate the possibility that some foreign power gets a U.S. address, puts a plant in, and does it, but it makes it more difficult. And one of the funnier moments in the original first hearings that happened in October and November 2017 occurred when a member of the committee said, well, how clear, how smart did you have to be to figure out they were Russians? They were buying ads in rubles. Well, they didn't do that very much. In fact, one of the things they were indicted for was stealing identities of people in the United States in order to use them as a fake conduit through which to buy content. The other thing that they're doing is trying with the content that comes in that is problematic, both from U.S. sources and non, to put fact-checking up against it. And I run factcheck.org, so we're actually part of that, in the hope that when people search for misinformation, not knowing it is misinformation, that there will be corrective content up next to it. And if people will read the correction before they read the misinformation, we increase the likelihood they won't believe the misinformation. Yeah. So that's actually an important step. They're also trying to increase the likelihood that we know who's behind content. And so Google on YouTube is putting up disclaimers on air when the content is government-sponsored. Now, that means, for example, that you will know that RT is actually what used to be called Russia Today, and so you're watching a Kremlin-sponsored channel. And those videos from RT are from a Kremlin-sponsored nation, or they're from Kremlin sponsors. But it also means that our PBS is also identified as having some government support. So they're trying to disclose the source of things to increase the likelihood that we assess whether we want to believe them based on source.
Yeah, I get it. We just have a minute left before we're going to hit a hard break here. One of the things that I've noticed on Twitter, I've got over 100,000 followers, and so I think I'm a target for this. People will come on and they'll say something very well crafted. I mean, and it's what would have been in an ad, but it's not the ad. It's just it's a comment that just, takes down some Democratic talking point or whatever. And when I look at the profile of the person, I discover that they've got 12,000 tweets and 5 followers, which says to me that it's a bot or something. And so, I block them. But, how does Twitter handle that? Should they go to a you must demonstrate the, use your real name kind of policy? No more pseudonyms?
Well, one the anonymity or pseudonymity of the platforms makes it easier to disguise who you are. Right. And so the question is, should they at least verify that the person who is posting is a real person?
Right.
So forget whether it's actually a person by your name who is actually you. First, do we know it's a real person?
Right.
Because when bots are able to surge against content, they increase the likelihood that we feel as if our community has endorsed it before we've ever thought about it.
Yeah.
And there's a persuasive effect behind that can be pernicious. Also, when you look at the Twitter followers, a reasonable number of those turned out to be bots.
Yeah, we're out of time here. Professor Kathleen Hall Jamieson, hang on just a second.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's a brand new book. It's called Cyber War, How Russian Hackers and Trollers Helped Elect a President, What We Can't, and Do Know. Kathleen Hall Jamieson, thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
And welcome back. Wayne in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hey, Wayne, thanks for listening to the program. What's up?
Hi, Tom. And initially, I wanted to encourage my brothers and sisters to contribute to Free Speech TV. I've done that and reissued my support.
Bless you. Thank you.
Two quick questions. One on the Kavanaugh hearings. I'm suggesting that at the opening statements, the lawyer for Dr. Ford get up and say, with all due respect to the assistant prosecutor, my client will not take questions from unelected officials, especially when they have no power to subpoena, investigate or call witnesses, that she'll only take questions from elected officials so we the people can hear her. And the second question is, if this is related to your previous guest, the professor, if there's some evidence the FBI can take that the Russians are involved in pushing propaganda for Kavanaugh to be elected and encouraged, that either through the internet or through articles, could Mueller get involved and sort of circumvent the need for the committee to have FBI investigation?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still stuck on this question, and all great stuff, Wayne. I'm still stuck on this question of what do we do with the fact that our president is our president because a foreign government interfered in our elections?
He used the word fake. He's a fake president.
We have no precedent for this. I mean, there's nothing in the Constitution about this, other than the power of impeachment. And if we're going to impeach him, we would have to also impeach Mike Pence, because the two of them got in together under the same circumstances. But that makes Paul Ryan president. Although if the Democrats take back the House of Representatives and Nancy Pelosi is Speaker of the House, it would make Nancy Pelosi president, which would effectively reverse the election.
Would they have to, say, if the Democrats in charge have a simultaneous impeachment? So if they do it separately, say, Trump, could Pence immediately become president, and then he can nominate a vice president, so he doesn't have
I guarantee you, Wayne, if the Democrats had, if Hillary Clinton had become president and there was any evidence whatsoever that Russia helped put her there, I mean, look at how bent out of shape they were about Obama not even being a U.S. citizen, right? So, their assertion. And therefore he should be impeached immediately and the whole administration should be flipped and we should go back to, whoever it was, John McCain or whatever, Mitt Romney as president. And, they would, if the Republicans, if a Democratic president got in with help from the Russian, well, I mean, they went after Al Gore because he had a donation from a Chinese billionaire back in the day,
If you remember when Schwarzenegger was at his height, and was it in the 90s, and as governor of California, they wanted to change the rules.
Yeah.
To have a foreign-born president.
That's right. They wanted to amend the Constitution because they thought Schwarzenegger would be the guy who could get it in. And I believe that all of these efforts, the effort to capture Congress, funded by the billionaires, the effort to put a right-wing billionaire in the White House, all of these efforts were directed toward one singular goal. This is the only thing the billionaire class cares about, is the Supreme Court. Get a 5-4 majority of billionaire-friendly right-wing fascists on the Supreme Court, and it's game over. And we're willing to lose Congress for a generation, if that's the case, in order to make that happen. And I think that they're just a whisker away from it. Wayne, thanks for the call. We'll be right back. Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads, they pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Back to this massive stack of news that we've got for the day. You have heard of these charges being made against Brett Kavanaugh that he participated in, along with Mark Judge. The actual gang rape of women at Yale University. That is pretty damn over the top. We've got meanwhile, the Violence Against Women Act has 163 Democratic co-sponsors in the House of Representatives. You know how many Republicans have signed on to reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act? This was passed on a bipartisan basis, both Republicans and Democrats, back in 1994 in the wake of the Anita Hill hearings. And how many Republicans have signed on to this bill? 0. In the House of Representatives, 0. And the Republicans who voted against it back in 2013, when it passed the Senate, 78-22. Among those 22 no votes, for the last time the Violence Against Women reauthorization happened in 2013, among those no votes in the Senate, Chuck Grassley, head of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Orrin Hatch, chief curmudgeon on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Lindsey Graham, chief suck-up on the Senate Judiciary Committee. John Cornyn, chief, Texan on the committee. Mike Lee, I was going to say kind of chief creepy guy, but that distinction goes to Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz, chief creepy guy on the Senate Judiciary Committee. And this is bizarre. The Republicans are having absolutely nothing to do with the Violence Against Women Act. When did this become partisan? When did the Republican Party become the party of, hating women? And now you've got this 44-page amicus brief, friend of the court brief, filed by Orrin Hatch, who's also on the Judiciary Committee and who also voted against the Violence Against Women Act. Orrin Hatch saying that if Trump pardons, this is a Supreme Court case, the Supreme Court is going to hear this case in October. If Trump pardons Manafort or Flynn or anybody else, his son, whatever, then they cannot be prosecuted by state courts because that would be double jeopardy. This is before the Supreme Court now. And, it's like, seriously? Well, yeah, seriously. This is what we're doing. We want to make sure that Donald Trump can pardon people and that those pardons will stick and they can't be essentially overridden by a Democratic state like Connecticut or New York or Massachusetts where these crimes might have happened. And it's Orrin Hatch who's doing this. This is a big deal. The case before the Supreme Court is Gamble versus the United States. So watch this space. I've got more news for you. We'll pick up your phone calls after the break. Stick around. It's 27 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. And welcome back, Free Speech TV. This is the last 3 days of the Fall Pledge Drive. Today is Wednesday. We have today, Thursday, and Friday, 3 more days, including today, to try to get back up to where our goal was. And we are behind. And that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the network. It's not a good thing for you if you enjoy watching this network or this program on this network. I don't think we're at the point where things will start to go away, but we're moving in that direction. And we're certainly not at the point where things can continue to expand and, you know, get free speech TV on more platforms and all that kind of thing. So my humble request to you is if you have not yet donated to Free Speech TV, and it is a donation and it does keep this network going, please call now, 877-378-8669, and make a contribution for whatever is comfortable for you, whatever you can afford, as your way of saying, yes, I am a progressive, I do care about these issues, I do want to see this country moving forward, and, you know, let me help out, let me pitch in, number one. And number two, if you can't afford to make a contribution, you can still help this network. If we had twice as many viewers right now, we could do this pledge drive in half the amount of time, right? Because there would be twice as many people donating and we'd hit our goals twice as fast. So if you can get just one other person, now you might have to talk to 4 or 5 people, maybe even 6 or 8. I don't know what it'll take, but maybe only 2 or 3. I guess it depends on, you know, your friends and neighbors and relatives and how politically active they are and whether they have the time during the day to watch television and all, you know, all those variables. But if you can get just one person in addition to yourself regularly watching this show on this network, then, you know, when the winter pledge drive comes around, we'll be in much better shape. And that doesn't cost a penny. You know, typically email is free and most people can make phone calls for free, and you can certainly talk to people you know in person for free. So there are a lot of ways to help out Free Speech TV, and I know that you want to help Free Speech TV. I know that you care about this network. It's why you're watching it. And, you know, now we need your help. With a $30 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV Vote Mini Kit. That's the sticker and the button. With a $72 contribution, you get a copy of the newly released, newly updated edition of The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight by me, updated, you know, just this year. All brand new data on the climate change stuff, and it's a great book. This book has inspired a number of people whose names you would recognize to jump into the environmental movement. It's one of the books I've written that I'm the most proud of, and I think you'll like it. And if you already have a copy, or if you have one of the older editions, well, if you have one of the older editions, you'll want the new edition. But it's also a great gift. This is a great gift, particularly for young people, college students, high school students. You know, as an introduction to environment, politics, culture, progressive worldview. It's a great book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. Ancient sunlight, of course, refers to oil, right? Sunlight 200 million years ago or 300 million years ago, landing on plants, the plants using that sunlight to fuel photosynthesis and make more plant, the plants eventually getting crushed under the earth and turning into coal or oil or gas. And, you know, now we burn this. So it's the last hours of fossil fuels, really, is what the book is about. That's with the $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt and the button and the sticker. With a $240 gift, and these are these numbers, rather than being round numbers, it's $240 because it's divisible by 12 months, which is $20 a month. $120 divisible by 12 months, it's $10 a month. So you can make it as a monthly pledge for the next year or as a just outright gift. $240 gift, you get the hoodie kit, and that's the Free Speech TV sweatshirt, made in the USA, a zip-up sweatshirt with a hood. Something that these kind of things are really useful in places like the Pacific Northwest, where it doesn't really seriously rain all winter, but it kind of mists all winter. And hoodies work here actually, although sometimes you need a raincoat too. But anyhow, you get that plus the sticker and the button. With a $360 gift, you get the Free Speech TV Vote Our Future pack with the T-shirt and the hoodie, and the button and the sticker. With a $480 gift, you get the all of the above package. You get the T-shirt and the sweatshirt, but you also get my book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, and you get the sticker and the button. So it's all of the above. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, Oregon, and I'll take you to lunch. And a fine time will be had by all, right? In fact, we're scheduling some of these right now. So thanks so much for your contribution. If you've made one, and please chip in now. Thanks.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thom Hartmann here with you, and it's 34 minutes past the hour. Let's see what's on your all minds right now. This is, boy, what a vibrant time in America. RJ in Greenville, Michigan, listening on 1680 AM. Hey, RJ, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Question. And you were talking, this is scenarios, of course, impeachment.
Right.
And you were talking about impeachment of the president, obviously, and possibly the vice president. And somebody mentioned the fact that, Speaker of the House, Ryan, would be next in line. I might be wrong, but I find it a little bit hard to believe that Ryan is not guilty of some prior knowledge of some of the crimes and possible treason that's gone on.
Oh, I think you're entirely right, but there's a larger issue, and that is that if Ryan was Speaker of the House, he would not allow a bill of impeachment even to hit the floor. So, that kind of prevents that from happening. I mean, if the Republicans control the House, there's not going to be a bill of impeachment. But if Democrats control the House, there may be. The problem is it's going to take 66 votes in the Senate in order to actually remove him from office. And that has failed by one vote the last two times it was tried, Bill Clinton and Andrew Johnson. There only once in our history, Supreme Court Justice Chase back in 1804, as I recall, has there even been an attempt to remove a Supreme Court justice, and it was not successful back when they tried to take out Chase. And so the odds of this happening are vanishingly small. I mean, just, very, very small. But that doesn't mean that you don't necessarily shoot for it, because, what it does is it puts you on the record. It brings up the issues. I guarantee you that if there was a Democratic president right now, if Hillary Clinton had been elected and there was even the smallest hint that another country had put money into her campaign, whether it was Russia or Denmark, the Republicans would be saying right now, we've got to invalidate the entire election by impeaching both the president and the vice president and whoever they put on the Supreme Court and all the federal judges. And let's just get to it. And they would be doing everything they could to make this happen. This is about the Supreme Court. The billionaires who have been funding this effort ever since 1971 when the Powell memo came out, the billionaires who have been funding this have been trying to get the entire legal structure of the United States changed so that there is no longer an environmental protection agency, that there is no longer any kind of watchdog agencies, Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. There is no longer any kind of consumer protection. There's no longer, the ability, the Supreme Court has already largely done away with class action lawsuits and largely, forced all of us to go into arbitration rather than have our constitutionally guaranteed by the 6th or 7th Amendment day in court. It's just going to get worse and worse. And this is what they want. And they're perfectly willing to give up, to lose control of the House, the Senate, and the White House once they've got the Supreme Court for a generation, because they know that once they've got the court, they got everything because of judicial supremacy and judicial review. So there you go. Anyway, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the call, RJ. I appreciate it. Let's see here. Dave in Arcata, California, listening on KGOE. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Well, Tom, you do a wonderful thing. All in all, I'm going to disagree with you on one thing, but mostly this electronic era came over us too quickly in our evolution, and the corporate greed neocons grabbed control of the electronics big time, and they are now controlling our computers, our phones, and all electronics. The worst of it is the media and the voting equipment. They can electronically control that. Russia could take a big part in it, but they are not needed.
So, Dave, what's your point?
Well, that we need to see through this and find a way around it. You are a hope, maybe C-SPAN, a few little narrow winding roads we can get to the truth on. Right now, as we're talking, there are hundreds and hundreds of people in front of Senator Collins' office and other senators with signs saying no on Kucinich, and the media is not allowed to cover that.
Yeah, no on Kavanaugh. I'm not sure that they're not allowed, but what they've found is that they can make a lot more money playing Donald Trump than playing protesters, which is a real sad commentary on the state of things. Richard in Santa Fe, listening on Sirius XM. Hey, Richard, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I'm not generally very political, at least 10 years ago until I started listening to you, and I don't know whether to thank you or not. And so I'm wondering, you swim in these waters. How do you cope with this stuff?
I think my disposition, I am naturally optimistic, and I've read enough history and I've lived long enough to know that this country's been through hell before. I mean, we went through a civil war. We went through the Great Depression. We went through the Spanish flu in World War I. We went through World War II. We went through the burning of the White House in 1812, the War of 1812. We have been through hell and back, and we have, so far, always bounced back a little more democratic than when we started out. And I don't mean party, I mean, the concept. Right. And so I feel like I'm watching cycles of history. And I wrote about this at some length in my book, The Crash of 2016, which, is unfortunately titled. But I still think that, what I predicted in that book is coming. And that when we get out of it, things will be better because we are moving forward. We are learning. We are progressing. Things are getting better. So, in fact, I was last night, this is something you may want to look up. July 12th, 1816, I'm pretty sure. I'm doing this from memory. July 12th, 1816, a fellow by the name of Samuel Kercheval, Kercheval, wrote a letter to Thomas Jefferson. On July 12th, Jefferson answered it at some length. And he talked about this exact issue because the Federalists had pretty much taken over the entire federal government at this point. Jefferson was 8 years out of the White House. And he was talking about how, we have to reboot our government periodically, and we have to be amenable to change. And as times change and circumstances change, our understanding of the laws has to change. And, it was actually a very inspiring letter. I was reading yesterday. In fact, I'm writing a book right now on the Supreme Court, and I just wrote a whole chapter around his letter to Kercheval, which I encourage you to check out, Richard. But I don't. Climate change, frankly, scares me a hell of a lot more than our political stuff right now. Oh, and so and I wrote a book about that too. But that's we just what can you do? Despair is not an option, as Bernie used to say, and I absolutely agree with it. So and I've found that the best antidote for feeling powerless or feeling concerned or feeling freaked out is to do something. So that's why I come into work every single day. Richard, thank you for the call, and thanks for your kind words. Pauline in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Hey, Pauline, thanks for listening to our iHeartRadio station there. What's up?
Yes, I was just going to comment on those men on the Judiciary Committee, Hatch and Blake, and I don't know if Lee. I think Lee is too.
Yeah, and Grassley. Yeah.
I call him Crapple. They call him Creeple. Yeah. But they're Mormons, and there's a group of nationally. There's a group of Mormon women who are protesting what's going on in the treatment of women in our government in Washington. And for Mormon women to stand up to the men is unbelievable, because I've been around the Mormon religion off and on.
Yeah, Mike Lee and Orrin Hatch are both Mormons. Who else on the committee is? Is Flake a Mormon?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, I didn't realize
Mormon.
that. Wow.
Absolutely.
So
and Lee.
And and Mike Lee is a Mormon.
Yes.
Yeah, well, he's from Utah. Yeah, Lee and Hatch. Yeah.
And Flake and Crapo.
Yeah.
But anyway, the women in the Mormon Church have stood up to the men, and it is a national group. And I should have written down the name, but I did not.
Nice.
But it was fantastic to hear, because the Mormon women do not stand up in the Mormon Church.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing. I recently saw a headline to that effect. Pauline, thanks for putting that on my radar. I appreciate it. Rudy in Atlanta, Georgia. Rudy, we have just a minute to the break. You got a quick one here?
Yes, Tom. You know, it's funny you said the climate, because Mother Nature is something that's before us that scares me more than anything.
Yeah.
You know, besides me being a truck driver, I do landscape. I've been in a landscape for 20-some years, and I haven't seen a handful of bees. I mean, I just haven't seen them.
Oh, I'm not seeing bugs anymore. We get people calling in who are truck drivers who are saying, "There's no bugs on my windshield. There used to be all,
No. And it scares me. I mean, this is what's happening, and we're killing ourselves in so many ways.
Yep.
And we need to wake up. We just really need to wake up.
I agree. Well, again, it's why I'm here.
Enjoy your day, Tom.
Trying to help wake people up. Thanks a lot, Rudy. It's good to hear. It's always good to hear from you. I appreciate it. And thanks for listening to us on Sirius XM. You know, Rudy is so right. And there are forces committed to essentially keeping us asleep. In the case of the network television companies, it's through profits, the profit motive, Oh, let's not talk about prescription drugs. That industry gives us a lot of money. Let's not talk about climate change. We get a lot of money from the fossil fuel industry. Let's not talk about billionaires influencing elections, because we get a lot of money from the billionaires every election. This is not a good thing. And we need to wake up from this, and we need independent media. We'll be back. It's 45 minutes past the hour. We're going to check in with Talk Media News in a minute.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be Ellen Ratner with us in about 4 minutes from Talk Media News. So stick around. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Mike in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Mike. What's up? Thanks for watching Free Speech.
Tom, thanks so much for what you do. I was recently made aware of a different facet of the resistance. A friend who's on dating sites, a male, said that many women are saying, if you voted for Trump, don't bother contacting me. And one person said, if you voted for Trump and regret it, I might think about it. Accepting your...
I am waiting for one of the companies that has the technology of dating sites all figured out to come up with, so that they can easily clone it, under a different company name, and to come up with a dating site uniquely for Trump supporters and uniquely for Trump haters.
There you go. I'm actually in Roswell. You're familiar with Roswell, I think. Roswell, Georgia.
Yeah, I used to live there.
Even here, we have a record number of candidates running against the establishment Republicans, and many, many, many of them are women. We're so grateful for what they're doing, and we thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, and great to hear from you, and thanks for watching us there in Atlanta. Lois in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Hey, Lois, thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
Hi, Tom. I'm a little nervous, first-time caller.
Thank you.
I was just wondering if anybody thought about the fact that the Republicans have the fix in while Obama was being president. They were working behind the scenes to make sure that they never lost power again.
Yep.
And so they took his presidency to set everything up on their side, so that they are not making any moves to try to do the right thing, because they already know that they have the fix in already. And Trump was saying something about China meddling in our elections. He never mentioned Russia meddling in our elections.
Right.
And so they set it up already. I'm sorry?
Pardon? Say it again, Lois. I'm sorry.
I say, so they're not worried about being reelected because they feel like they have everything wrapped up in their behalf before the election even starts. And that's not to say that everybody should not get out and vote. They should, even more so. But keep that in mind, that they already think that they have the fix in and they're not going to lose.
Yeah, and the big hijacking of democracy in the modern era really began in a big way with the 2000 election, with all these guys, the phony baloney Brooks Brothers riot down in Florida that shut down the count, and then that going to the Supreme Court. And who worked on that campaign? Who was down there helping advise the Republicans? Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch and John Roberts. So we've got 3 Republicans now going on to the Supreme Court who are all graduates of that campaign to shut down the recount, the Brooks Brothers riots. And then on top of that, if Rod Rosenstein is fired or quits, the guy who's going to replace him, this Neil, I'm forgetting his last name, but whatever, the guy who's going to replace him, he was part of the Brooks Brothers riots. He was part of that whole campaign to stop the recount in Florida, which, by the way, when they finally did the recount a year later in November of 2001, they published the results and they found, hey, by any measure, Al Gore won the election in Florida. And so, I mean, that was when the Republicans, that was when the billionaire class that was funding the Republicans, I think, realized that they can get away with murder. And they have been doing it consistently ever since. You're absolutely right. The caucus room conspiracy, trying to kill off the Obama presidency, freezing his judicial appointments for the last 2 years, including Merrick Garland. These guys are playing for keeps. Lois, thank you for the call. They are playing hardball for keeps. They are playing dirty hardball for keeps. We'll be back with Ellen Ratner with Talk Media News in just a minute. Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads. They pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
News and find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Ellen Ratner's new book, Loving What You Do. On the phone with us is Ellen Ratner herself. Hey, Ellen, what's going on?
Well, thank you so much. Well, I'm in New York for the 73rd meeting of the security. I'm sorry, of the general election.
General Assembly.
General Assembly. Sorry about that. Yes, in New York at the United Nations. Of course, Trump spoke yesterday at the United Nations, and today, because the Security Council is changes every month, and it's run by the United States for the month of September. He actually had a meeting of the Security Council that he ran. Now, listen, I'm against Kavanaugh too. However, he's got somebody in line, if Kavanaugh doesn't make it, who's a female who is more right-wing than Kavanaugh, if you can imagine.
Really?
And that really worries me. Yes. And so I'm worried, if Kavanaugh doesn't go through, and now there's a third woman that says that basically they got women on drugs and whatever, and then they raped them. Yeah. This is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. It's also, I think, a very revealing glimpse into the nature of wealthy white entitlement in the frat boy culture in this country.
Well, it certainly was, and the question is whether it's still going on in this day and age.
Amen.
Whether, I think it actually might be.
Yep.
I don't think they're getting women on pills and drugged, but certainly they feel like women are theirs.
Yeah, they may be still doing it that way, or they may just be renting them. They're wealthy enough. But
it's interesting. I was just telling your wife that I was abused by the fruit man when I was 17 or 18 years old. And he pinned me against the wall and started feeling me up and all that. I never thought of going to the police. Who would go to the police then?
Yeah, there was a different time and a different understanding of all these things. What else is going on in the world, Ellen?
Absolutely. Okay. So now the president made remarks at the UN Security Council today, and as I said, the United States is in charge of it for the month of September. But interestingly enough, he has accused China of interfering with the 2018, which we haven't had yet, election. And so that's very interesting. China is responding to that, but the president made that accusation today.
Wow.
So that's very interesting. Now, there has been also some very interesting votes on what might be happening with the House and the midterm elections. A lot of people are saying that the midterm elections may turn the House into Democrats. We just don't know. As they say, the only poll that's worthwhile is the one on voting day.
Yep.
Also, the president has a new limousine. It costs $1.5 million. It's called the Beast, and it has a refrigerator stocked with his blood type.
Wow.
So that's very interesting. Also, again, back to the midterms, what we do know is that, again, if people go out and vote, and I get a lot of things from the Democratic Party and the Republican Party because I signed up for the Republican Party so I can see what they say, and I get a lot of things every day, go out and vote, go out and vote, go out and vote. There's people on the streets here in New York City where I am now because of the General Assembly that are saying register to vote, etc.
Yeah, this is a big deal, particularly since the Republican secretaries of state around the country have already knocked several million people off the voting rolls, just since the last election. So,
well, that's what they're trying to do, and they're trying to, and now there's lawsuits to get people back on the voting roll.
Right, it's going to be tough. I mean, the guy who's running for governor in Georgia, forgetting his name right now, against Stacey Abrams. He took over 400,000 people off the voting rolls last year as Secretary of State. Now he's running for governor.
And the thing is that if you don't vote, they just take you off the rolls. It's craziness.
Yeah, and there was the Supreme Court that authorized that. In that case involving Ohio, just last year.
Great state of Ohio.
Yeah. So what else is up, Ellen?
So now it's very interesting. They have now said that hemp imports have reached $67 million. And what's fascinating about that, of course, that hemp is not, even though it's made from the same plant as marijuana, et cetera, it's not something that you can get high off of. But because of the rules right now, you have to import the hemp and you can't grow it here. Well, that's craziness.
Yeah. This I'm guessing these imports are principally from Canada, right?
Well, I don't know where they're from. Canada, all over the world, actually.
We should be able to grow hemp, industrial hemp. I mean, we should be able to grow pot.
Hemp.
Yeah.
We should be able to. I mean, this is insanity, and it's just. And frankly, if the police officers spend their time on that, then they're not spending it on real crime.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay, so now there's a question of whether they're going to eliminate the military exercises in Korea, that'd be South Korea. The U.S. military has objected to that, basically. This puts them in direct conflict with President Trump, who basically says, hey, we're calling off all military exercises with Korea. And so this is going to be very interesting to see how they deal with that one.
Yeah, this is one of his promises to Little Rocket Man.
Right. That he's going to get rid of that kind of thing. It's very interesting. Yesterday, he didn't mention Little Rocket Man. He just said that they had a good relationship with North Korea. But that's not what they said a year ago.
Yeah. It's weird times, Ellen, having a grifter, for president. It really is.
For sure.
Ellen Ratner with Talk Media News. Ellen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great talking with you. We'll be back right after the top of the hour here. I got a good one for you. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads, they pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com. And welcome back, Free Speech TV. This is the last 3 days of the Fall Pledge Drive. Today is Wednesday. We have today, Thursday, and Friday, 3 more days, including today, to try to get back up to where our goal was. And we are behind. And that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the network. It's not a good thing for you if you enjoy watching this network or this program on this network. I don't think we're at the point where things will start to go away, but we're moving in that direction. And we're certainly not at the point where things can continue to expand and, get Free Speech TV on more platforms and all that kind of thing. So my humble request to you is if you have not yet donated to Free Speech TV, and it is a donation, and it does keep this network going, please call now, 877-378-8669, and make a contribution for whatever is comfortable for you, whatever you can afford, as your way of saying, yes, I am a progressive, I do care about these issues, I do want to see this country moving forward, and, let me help out, let me pitch in, number one. And number two, if you can't afford to make a contribution, you can still help this network. If we had twice as many viewers right now, we could do this pledge drive in half the amount of time, right? Because there would be twice as many people donating, and we'd hit our goals twice as fast. So if you can get just one other person, now you might have to talk to 4 or 5 people, maybe even 6 or 8. I don't know what it'll take, but maybe only 2 or 3. I guess it depends on, your friends and neighbors and relatives and how politically active they are and whether they have the time during the day to watch television and all those variables. But if you can get just one person in addition to yourself regularly watching this show on this network, then, when the winter pledge drive comes around, we'll be in much better shape. And that doesn't cost a penny. Typically email is free, and most people can make phone calls for free, and you can certainly talk to people in person for free. So there are a lot of ways to help out Free Speech TV, and I know that you want to help Free Speech TV. I know that you care about this network. It's why you're watching it. And, now we need your help. With a $30 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV Vote Mini Kit. That's the sticker and the button. With a $72 contribution, you get a copy of the newly released, newly updated edition of The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight by me, updated, just this year. All brand new data on the climate change stuff, and it's a great book. This excuse me, this book has inspired a number of people whose names you would recognize to jump into the environmental movement. It's it's one of the books I've written that I'm the most proud of, and I think you'll like it. And if you already have a copy, or if you have one of the older editions, well, if you have one of the older editions, you'll want the new edition. But it's also a great gift. This is a great gift, particularly for young people, college students, high school students. As an introduction to environment, politics, culture, progressive worldview. It's a great book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. Ancient sunlight, of course, refers to oil, right? Sunlight 200 million years ago or 300 million years ago, landing on plants, the plants using that sunlight to fuel photosynthesis and make more plant, the plants eventually getting crushed under the earth and turning into coal or oil or gas. And, now we burn this. So it's the last hours of fossil fuels, really, is what the book is about. That's with the $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt and the button and the sticker. With a $240 gift, and these are these numbers, rather than being round numbers, it's 240 because it's divisible by 12 months, which is $20 a month. 120 divisible by 12 months, it's $10 a month. So you can make it as a monthly pledge for the next year or as a just outright gift. $240 gift, you get the hoodie kit, and that's the Free Speech TV sweatshirt, made in the USA, a zip-up sweatshirt with a hood. Something that these kind of things are really useful in places like the Pacific Northwest, where it doesn't really seriously rain all winter, but it kind of mists all winter. Hoodies work here actually, although sometimes you need a raincoat too. But anyhow, you get that plus the sticker and the button. With a $360 gift, you get the Free Speech TV Vote Our Future pack with the T-shirt and the hoodie, and the button and the sticker. With a $480 gift, you get the all of the above package. You get the T-shirt and the sweatshirt, but you also get my book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, and you get the sticker and the button. So it's all of the above. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, Oregon, and I'll take you to lunch. And a fine time will be had by all, right? In fact, we're scheduling some of these right now. So thanks so much for your contribution. If you've made one, and please chip in now. Thanks.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. The third hour of our program. I want there's a couple of things here. I want to talk to you about Rod Rosenstein and what's going on with all of this and why, what it has to do with Paul Manafort. And I'm not talking about the pardon stuff. I'm talking about why at this moment in time, this very moment, this very week, Donald Trump feels that he has to shut down the investigation, number one. And number two, what's really at stake with Brett Kavanaugh, it's looking increasingly like the Kavanaugh nomination has fallen apart. Jeff Flake goes on the floor of the Senate about a half hour ago and says, I'm still open-minded. And Susan Collins is like, I'm open-minded. And now you've got Lisa Murkowski saying, this is very troubling stuff. And I predict that the Republicans will pull this nomination before 10 o'clock tomorrow morning so that Christine Blasey Ford does not have an opportunity to testify. And they just want to shut this thing down, get it out of the way. And Donald Trump is going to go to number 2 on the Federalist list, whoever that may be. And there's a lot of speculation about who it might be. But he's going to get somebody else who is, a reliable right-wing crank who will do what the Lochner Court did, what the Supreme Court did in the era from basically 1901 to 1937. And that is to say, if it's not in the Constitution, it's not constitutional. This is the argument that right-wingers have been making for a century. It's the argument that they made when they said that Brown versus Board of Education was wrongly decided and that Earl Warren should be impeached. It was the argument that they made when they said Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided and that and needed to be overturned. They say, if it's not in the Constitution, it doesn't count. It's not something that we should be paying attention to. And in the Constitution, there is this list of the specific. It's called the Enumerated Powers Clause, typically referred to as that, although the founders didn't call it that, and the Constitution doesn't call it that. But it's under the area. It's under Section 8. It's in a section called Powers Granted to Congress. And it starts out, the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debt and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. Number one. Number two, to borrow money. Number three, to regulate commerce. And it goes through this whole list of things that Congress can do. And then at the very end of this, number 18, it says, Congress shall have the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. In other words, and Congress can do whatever it wants. But this is not how conservatives have read this. Ronald Reagan, in March of 1961, Ronald Reagan released a recording, along with the American Medical Association, of a speech that he gave talking about how if we pass Medicare, this was Medicare, if we pass any kind of national health insurance program, we're toast. And, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. This is from a speech in 61. He reprised these themes in I think it was 66 or 67 to oppose Medicare. But here's Reagan talking about this.
But only here did that little band of men so advance beyond their time that the world has never seen their like since, evolve the idea that you and I have within ourselves the God-given right and the ability to determine our own destiny.
See, that determine our own destiny. You're the captain of your own ship. This is the key to the whole kind of right-wing worldview that we're seeing here. Medicare, that is unconstitutional. Reagan said it. I mean, he even said someday we'll look back, on that day when men were free, when they didn't have Medicare. He continues. Here he is.
You and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
When men were free, what it was once like in America. So this is what's going on. And they want to get somebody on the court who's going to take this court back to the Lochner era and say, none of these programs are legal or legitimate. They are all unconstitutional. They all need to be overturned. And I think they're going to pull it off. I don't, Kavanaugh was particularly egregious when it came to women's issues in particular and workplace issues. But they've got another 24 people, I think, on the list that the Federalist Society, they have been grooming these young right-wingers for decades. Funded by the right-wing billionaires, grooming these young legal students and turning them into reliable right-wing acolytes. And they're going to get this. I mean, this is the game. So, number one, the Republican Party is willing to lose the Senate, right? Everybody, all these commentators, these talking heads are like, oh, gee, we could have a blue wave. It could be a bloodbath. The Democrats might take over. Isn't that cool? The billionaires don't care. If they've got the Supreme Court, they've got the whole thing. And they're willing to sacrifice some of these people, and they're gonna go to people like Jeff Flake, and they're gonna say, there's a think tank that would love to give you a $2 million a year job when you leave the Senate, as long as you don't flip from the Democratic to the Republican Party, or from the Republican to the Democratic Party. Don't do what Jim Jeffords did. We got your back. And I believe, they've got enough money. I mean, they're dropping $900 million in this election cycle. They've got enough money that they can go to every Republican in Congress and say, you know, if you lose the election because of what we're doing in packing the court, if you lose the election because the billionaire class is packing the court, and because, you know, we got Trump in with the help of Russia, if you lose your seat because of that, we got your back. You, as long as you keep reliably voting to support the fossil fuel industry, to fight efforts to mitigate climate change, to deregulate industry, to deregulate the banks, we've got your back. We've got a job waiting for you. We've got, you know, I mean, these guys have money spilling out their pockets as they're walking. So there's that. And then there's the whole Rosenstein thing. Now, why is it that suddenly Trump is talking about Rosenstein? Well, in part, the timing was obvious. I mean, you know, tomorrow was supposed to be Christine Blasey Ford's testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Again, I'm predicting it's not going to happen. I could be wrong. But, you know, up until a few hours ago, everybody assumed that that was going to be the case. And Trump assumed that. And so he figured out he would put on an alternative media show. I mean, this is what he's so good at. He's built his entire life around manipulating the media, his entire career around manipulating the media. And now that Weisselberg, the guy who ran his company, who ran his father's company, is cooperating with Mueller, as well as Cohen, his personal fixer, as well as Manafort, his partner, who lived right down the hall from him in Trump Tower, or right down the, the floor from him. Trump has got a real problem. He did not expect to become president. He ran for president because he wanted NBC to pay him more money. And he was trying to prove with this stunt. He was going to make an announcement and have 2 campaign rallies. He was paying actors $50 a head to show up for his announcement. This is all on this is public record. It was a stunt. And he was going to have 2 campaign rallies, and then he was going to say, well, I guess I'm not going to make it. And at that point, NBC was going to come in and say, oh, Donald, you're so much better than Gwen Stefani. We need to pay you as much as we pay her for Celebrity Apprentice. That was his plan. He didn't even have a speech written, an acceptance speech, when he won. He was completely expecting to lose. This is like The Producers, the Mel Brooks film, where, they made their money by having a failure on Broadway. And so it didn't occur to him that his money laundering operations, ever since his last bankruptcy, he has been desperate for cash. And he's been getting that cash from despotic regimes around the world, many of them former Soviet states and Russia, from these oligarchs laundering their money through real estate. Real estate has so many loopholes. You can buy a multi-million-dollar condo from Trump for cash. No accounting, no nothing. Here's some cash, which is, what the mobsters and the oligarchs love to do. So, I mean, there's a series of deep reports in the Financial Times from a year and a half ago, 2016, that talked about how, with the help of intermediaries like Felix Sater and Sergey Milan, this from a piece by Mark Sumner in Daily Kos, Trump turned his organization from a bankrupt real estate firm that was unable to fund the building of a pup tent into a powerhouse money laundering firm that saw hundreds of millions of dollars pouring in from Russia and other former Soviet territories. His genius at selling New York and Florida real estate at ridiculous markups was just, money laundering and lax regulations. The money was coming in through banks in Cyprus. Our Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross, was the co-head of one of these banks in Cyprus. So we've got this going on. And then they have, when you look at Paul Manafort, what Paul Manafort just pled guilty to, it was money laundering for Oleg Deripaska. And if you replaced Manafort's name with Trump and Deripaska's name with any of about a dozen different billionaires from these foreign countries, that would describe the majority of Donald Trump's income. And he is scared to death that this is all going to come out. And Rod Rosenstein recently signed an order expanding the scope of the investigation to include the money laundering scheme on which Paul Manafort was convicted. I believe this happened 2 weeks ago. And that gives the authority to investigate Trump's business dealings to Mueller. And Trump wants that shut down now. And that's why he's trying to get rid of Rosenstein, because the guy who would replace Rosenstein, the number 2 guy, who would be the number 2 guy, he's currently the Solicitor General of the United States. He is on the record as saying that he believes that if Mueller were to start looking into the president's finances, into Trump's finances, that is a red line that should not be crossed. That is not contemplated in the legislation and the rules establishing Mueller's position and what he may look into. So Trump wants to get this done, and he wants to get it done now because he's trying to keep his kids and himself out of jail.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So once again, the billionaires have Trump. He's one of them, and they want to get the Supreme Court. Hang on, this ride's going to get real interesting. And welcome back. Marta in Big Bear Lake, California. Hey, Marta, what's on your mind today?
Well, I want to congratulate you on the revised edition of Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight.
Well, thank you.
I used that when I was a teaching associate in English composition at the college level.
Whoa, that's high praise.
Most of my students loved it. There were just a few who were, under the impression or brainwashed that global warming is not a problem.
Right.
We have catastrophic global warming. Catastrophic, we're not seeing it yet, but you, in this book, you don't just talk about that. My recollection, and correct me if I'm wrong, you talk about the very beginning from millions of years ago of oil. You talk about peak oil, global warming, but you also bring in other issues and you tie it all together with the indigenous paradigm and worldview versus the European settler worldview based on, greed and acquisition, property.
Yep.
And you bring in respect for women. And you just bring in so many things and put them all together. The critical thinking is just so important, and we're not getting it from the mainstream media. It's all about ratings and one story at a time, and not being able to put things in perspective. And I hope that we will demand that Democrats, stop supporting this exploding war economy and instead really go for a Green New Deal.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the principal message of Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight is it's the culture, stupid. And we need to reinvent our culture, and we need to wake up from this stuff. And a Green New Deal would be a great part of that. Marta, thank you so much for your kind words and endorsement, essentially. I appreciate it. Connie in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Hey, Connie, what's up?
Hey, well, Tom, I'm a political junkie, and I have tried to absorb everything I can. And I heard recently that the Democrats, if they take charge, there's a possibility that they could appoint 2 liberal Democrats to SCOTUS, and which would give them 1 more than the Republicans.
No, that would only be if they win the White House in 2020, because the president makes the appointments. Yeah, the president makes the appointments. So
I'm counting on that.
Yeah, but the unfortunate thing, though, Connie, is that all of the justices who are of an age to retire are Democratic appointees. Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Breyer, and I don't have all the names right off the top of my head, but they're getting elderly, particularly Ginsburg, and the timing couldn't be worse. This is why I don't know that it was just the Russians. I think it was the billionaires who got Trump into the White House. I think that Robert Mercer, his role, Cambridge Analytica, all that, the micro-targeting, all that kind of stuff. The billionaires wanted a Republican president. They didn't care who it was. They could even be one of their own and a buffoon like Trump, and that's what they got. And this is all about the Supreme Court from the billionaires' perspective. And you just have to understand how they think, what their goals really are. Connie, thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for watching Free Speech TV. It's great talking with you. We'll be right back. It's 22 minutes past the hour. Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads. They pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And let's see here. Cecile in Cleveland, Ohio. Hey, Cecile, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. How are you? Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure. What's up?
I just have a comment, actually. I wanted to share with you and your audience that I found out yesterday that when I went online to check to see if I was registered, and I'm in the state of Ohio in the city of Cleveland Heights. So I checked because I've been regularly voting in the local elections. I didn't think there was a problem, but I went ahead and did a search and found that I was not registered.
Whoa!
And I've lived here for many, many, many years. But on top of that, so then I went ahead and quickly registered online. But I went down to the Board of Elections this morning, and I found out that I am on the roll. Mm-hmm. That I've been registered since 2015, which is when I changed addresses. Mm-hmm. I got married, and then I changed the address and moved from one residence to another. And so they had the update from 2015. Right. Anyway, I thought that was really surprising that something online would tell me I'm not registered, and to, go and check and register, and then to go down there and find out that I am registered and have been so legitimately since 2015 with the update, with the change of residency.
Yeah, a lot of these. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'll go ahead.
I was just going to say a lot of these systems are so archaic. These are old computer systems. They were bought back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and they're falling apart. They're not doing the job that they need to be doing.
Well, I'm not sure that it was that, because here's what happened. I went online. I'm a registered nurse. And so I went online, and it was through the American Nurses Association that asked me if I wanted to check and verify that my registration was up to date. Right. So, and that's actually the system that said to me, you are not registered. So, but the city of Cleveland in Ohio did say at the Board of Elections that I am registered legitimately.
Yeah. Well, that's
it just
good news, I
in
guess.
my mind that people should just check anyway, because you don't know what you're getting online, what is factual and what isn't. Yeah. And so I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, that's a good one, and thank you very much for that. I appreciate the call, and this is something all of us need to be doing, is double check your voter registration, because there has been a concerted campaign. It has been going on since the 80s in a big way. Keep in mind, back in the 60s, William Rehnquist made his chops in the Republican Party by standing outside polling places in the Phoenix area that were largely either Native American or Hispanic. He was a great big man. He was 6'2", and he would loudly challenge the right of any person who had brown skin to vote. That's how he got all the way up to the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, William Rehnquist. You can look it up. This is a long campaign to prevent people from voting in the United States that the Republicans have been running. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Back with you more of your calls right after this. It's 27 minutes and a half past the hour. And welcome back, Free Speech TV. This is the last 3 days of the Fall Pledge Drive. Today is Wednesday. We have today, Thursday, and Friday, 3 more days, including today, to try to get back up to where our goal was. And we are behind. And that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the network. It's not a good thing for you if you enjoy watching this network or this program on this network. I don't think we're at the point where things will start to go away, but we're moving in that direction. And we're certainly not at the point where things can continue to expand and, you know, get Free Speech TV on more platforms and all that kind of thing. So my humble request to you is if you have not yet donated to Free Speech TV, and it is a donation and it does keep this network going, please call now, 877-378-8669, and make a contribution for whatever is comfortable for you, whatever you can afford, as your way of saying, yes, I am a progressive, I do care about these issues, I do want to see this country moving forward, and, you know, let me help out, let me pitch in, number one. And number two, if you can't afford to make a contribution, you can still help this network. If we had twice as many viewers right now, we could do this pledge drive in half the amount of time, right? Because there would be twice as many people donating and we'd hit our goals twice as fast. So if you can get just one other person, now you might have to talk to 4 or 5 people, maybe even 6 or 8. I don't know what it'll take, but maybe only 2 or 3. I guess it depends on, you know, your friends and neighbors and relatives and how politically active they are and whether they have the time during the day to watch television and all, you know, all those variables. But if you can get just one person in addition to yourself regularly watching this show on this network, then, you know, when the winter pledge drive comes around, we'll be in much better shape. And that doesn't cost a penny. You know, typically email is free and most people can make phone calls for free, and you can certainly talk to people you know in person for free. So there are a lot of ways to help out Free Speech TV, and I know that you want to help Free Speech TV. I know that you care about this network. It's why you're watching it. And, you know, now we need your help. With a $30 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV Vote Mini Kit. That's the sticker and the button. With a $72 contribution, you get a copy of the newly released, newly updated edition of The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight by me, updated, you know, just this year. All brand new data on the climate change stuff, and it's a great book. This book has inspired a number of people whose names you would recognize to jump into the environmental movement. It's one of the books I've written that I'm the most proud of, and I think you'll like it. And if you already have a copy, or if you have one of the older editions, well, if you have one of the older editions, you'll want the new edition. But it's also a great gift. This is a great gift, particularly for young people, college students, high school students. You know, as an introduction to environment, politics, culture, progressive worldview. It's a great book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. Ancient sunlight, of course, refers to oil, right? Sunlight 200 million years ago or 300 million years ago, landing on plants, the plants using that sunlight to fuel photosynthesis and make more plant, the plants eventually getting crushed under the earth and turning into coal or oil or gas. And, you know, now we burn this. So it's the last hours of fossil fuels, really, is what the book is about. That's with the $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt and the button and the sticker. With a $240 gift, and these are these numbers, rather than being round numbers, it's $240 because it's divisible by 12 months, which is $20 a month, $120. divisible by 12 months, it's $10 a month. So you can make it as a monthly pledge for the next year or as a just outright gift. $240 gift, you get the hoodie kit, and that's the Free Speech TV sweatshirt, made in the USA, a zip-up sweatshirt with a hood. Something that these kind of things are really useful in places like the Pacific Northwest, where it doesn't really seriously rain all winter, but it kind of mists all winter. Hoodies work here actually, although sometimes you need a raincoat too. But anyhow, you get that plus the sticker and the button. With a $360 gift, you get the Free Speech TV Vote Our Future pack with the T-shirt and the hoodie, and the button and the sticker. With a $480 gift, you get the all of the above package. You get the T-shirt and the sweatshirt, but you also get my book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, and you get the sticker and the button. So it's all of the above. And with the $1,000 gift, come to Portland, Oregon, and I'll take you to lunch. And a fine time will be had by all, right? In fact, we're scheduling some of these right now. So thanks so much for your contribution. If you've made one, and please chip in now. Thanks.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
All aboard. It's a once-in-a-lifetime luxury Alaskan cruise on the Regent Seven Seas Mariner, July 24th, 2019. For more information, Keen Luxury Travel, 800-856-1155. And did I mention we'll be getting active on board with special events with yours truly, me and Louise, as we visit Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway, Sitka, Hubbard Glacier, and Anchorage. Wow, a lot going on here. One of the things that this is absolutely fascinating. Jeff Merkley, one of my senators here from Oregon, has announced that because the George W. Bush administration, well, actually because the Trump administration is refusing to release hundreds of thousands of pages of documents having to do with Brett Kavanaugh's lies about torture and his participation in torture and approving torture and, rendition and all these kind of things that he was doing when he was in the White House. Because of that, the Senate cannot exercise their advice and their constitutionally mandated advice and consent requirement. And therefore, until these documents are released, Brett Kavanaugh's nomination, the vote for it needs to be put on hold. He's filed this with, and here's the irony, he has filed this with the U.S. Circuit Court in the District of Columbia, which is the court on which Brett Kavanaugh sits. Although Brett Kavanaugh, of course, was not going to be one of the people making the decision about whether or not to grant this motion. But I think it's just fascinating. Peter in Fort Collins, Colorado. Hey, Peter, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Yeah,
hey, Peter.
I was having hey, I'm a taxi driver, and I was having a conversation with a client earlier today, and it got pretty heated because we were listening to the radio and the topic of immigration came up, and we both registered our opinions, and I definitely gave deference to his point of view. But when it came my turn, he basically got very, very angry, and he acted as if I was a bigot and a racist for expressing my opinion about having a more controlled introduction of species into the terra firma. So in other words, if you look at, I was using, I know it's a lot of stuff to take in right away, but I was using a metaphor of an aquarium, and I was just looking at it like, if a species were to be introduced too much into the ecosystem of the aquarium or whatever habitat you would prefer, that it would offset and disrupt the equilibrium of the aquarium as a whole.
On the one hand, Peter, if I may, Peter, on the one hand, you're actually right. And there is a reasonable speed at which people who are not part of a culture can be assimilated by a culture or can assimilate into a culture. And that speed has been exceeded in Europe by the wave of refugees who've come up to Europe as a result of our taking down Muammar Gaddafi in Libya and thus opening up this bridge, across to Greece. and or to Southern Europe. And the result of that is that you've got all this explosion of right-wing white nationalist sentiment all the way up to Sweden. On the other hand, the argument that you're making, because sometimes rational arguments can be twisted or used, the argument that you're making is also being used by white racists who are saying, but wait a minute, this is a white country. You don't want more brown-skinned people coming in. I'm talking about cultural differences, not racial differences. And you know, so, you know, if somebody's trying to immigrate from a country that largely shares our culture, and I would argue that even Spanish-speaking people from Central America largely share our culture. The Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, these countries at least have given lip service to American-style democracy for years and years and years. I mean, we've screwed them up enough times that we haven't, certainly in Mexico. Obviously, anybody who speaks English in Europe or you know, in the UK or Australia, but language isn't the sole determiner of culture or of values. So, you know, the problem, Peter, is this: so many people use your logic to basically, you know, to justify racism, and that's probably why your fair thought you were being a racist. If you're not.
Yeah, no, and I'm not. And that's a good point you made. It's entirely a structural situation. It's not anything to do with skin color or anything like that.
Well, this is why we need comprehensive immigration reform. We need to say, okay, here's the number of people who we're going to, you know, historically we've allowed 1 million people a year into the United States, and it's worked just fine. It's been good for everybody. And, you know, the Trump administration wants to change the composition of that, and they actually have. If you look at immigration into the United States by religion, up until 2 years ago, it was about 30% Christian, about 50% Muslim, and the balance was all the rest. This year, it is over 60% Christian, and it's only about 20% Muslim. So the whole profile of who's being allowed into the country now has changed in the last year and a half as a result of Trump tinkering with these, you know, with what countries can send people, what countries can't, how many people will take from each country. And what we're finding the Trump administration is doing is basically countries that either have people of color or people who are Muslim, and in most cases they're both, their priorities are being radically reduced. And countries that have people who are largely white and or Christian, they're having their numbers increased. And that's something that Congress should be deciding, in my opinion, not the Trump administration, Peter.
Tom, I agree with you on that, but the problem is that when you have large numbers of one population coming over, are you familiar with the Somalian population that came into the Minneapolis region?
Yeah, and they're doing just fine, and they've got a nice, a good community there. I met several of them the last time I was in Minneapolis.
Okay,
don't see a problem.
But
I realize that there's a bunch of local right-wing, you know, white power guys who are all freaked out about it, but it doesn't seem to be a problem.
Okay, but regardless if they have been able to micro-settle and create their own communities and possibly somewhat assimilate.
Immigrant communities always do that in the first generation, Peter. I mean, you know, the Italians did it, the Irish did it, you know, which had nothing to do with race and very little to do with culture. That is an absolutely normal thing. Peter, I got it. There's so many other things. I want to move along. Thanks for the call. Jim in Snohomish, Washington, listening on KBCS. Hey, Jim, what's up? Snohomish?
Yes, hi, Tom. I think, you know, 20 minutes was so insightful, and the one key thing is it's not in the Constitution. I think that's going to be their calling card for anything that they don't want to have.
Yeah.
But I have an idea to counterbalance, and for all those people, women, who do not get to testify, do a Swift boat type commercial, political commercial. What are your thoughts on something like that?
You know, the whole Swift boat thing started with Jerome Corsi, who's been on this program many, many times. He rolled it out here as well. And it was based on lies. It was based on deception. I'm not a fan of doing anything based on lies and deception. Over the long term, it doesn't hold together. It was criminal what they did to John Kerry. He would have easily beaten George W. Bush, and all the polls were showing that before the whole Swift boat campaign started. And they tore this guy down. And it was also criminal what Kerry's campaign advisors did when they told him, ignore it, it'll blow over, nobody's going to take these right-wing cranks seriously. So, you know, those are my thoughts on that. Anthony in New Jersey. Hey, Anthony, what's up?
Tom, I'd like to ask you, the woman, Miss Ford,
allegations were in Maryland. There's no statute of limitations in Maryland. Could she file criminal charges against Judge Kavanaugh?
I don't know. I don't know what the threshold for. I mean, anybody can go to the police and say, I think I've been the victim of a crime. But there is a particular legal threshold for that a prosecutor would look at and say, do we have enough stuff here to actually obtain a conviction? And if not, even if it's a low possibility, but if not, if you can't even get to that low possibility, you don't pursue the case. And so I honestly don't know. It's not my field. But it's a good question. It's a very good question. Will in Cincinnati. And the other question, the corollary by the way, to that question is, will Kavanaugh even retain his seat on the district court, on the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C., which is the second most important court in the United States? It looks to me like this guy should not be on that court either. Will in Cincinnati, listening on XM, Sirius XM. Hey, Will, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I'm going to talk about, some people talk about the FBI, when they did their background checks, did not uncover this.
Right.
Apparently six of them.
Right.
And I think that the Me Too movement, through this Kavanaugh nomination, has exposed the abuse and exploitation and the quieting of women in prep schools and elite colleges.
Yep.
Of how they treat women.
Yeah, this is frat boy culture.
Shamed and being quiet and keeping their mouths shut.
Yep. This is frat boy culture writ large.
And we had today the president going full kilter on conspiracy theory and smearing, counter smearing, and calling it a conspiracy, a political conspiracy.
Oh, his use of the word con job was like, he is projecting. He is so, he said, oh, they're doing a con. They're sitting around laughing to themselves as they're watching this all happen. Well, what he's revealing is that that's how he does it, in my opinion. Yeah, spot on.
Well, he's a narcissist. The narcissists see the world as nothing but mirrors.
Yes. Yeah, there you go.
Their own vices and evil onto it, and they can't stand to look into what they see, and they only like mirrors that project people around them and flatter them and tell them they're great.
Yep. Well said, Will. Well said. Thanks a lot for the call. We're kind of processing what's going on here today, trying to make sense of it all. I keep saying, and it's so important to come back to it, particularly because the largely billionaire-controlled corporate media in America is not going to be saying this. This is all about the agenda of a couple of hundred right-wing billionaires who want to blow up our form of government and replace it with libertarianism.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archive.
And they have been working on this since 1971, and they are this close. And we need to just stop anybody else going onto the Supreme Court the same way that McConnell did last year. And welcome back. John, watching us on YouTube in Florida. Hey, John. Excuse me, what's up?
Hey, John. Hey, Tom. Listen, just one quick question. Back in '71, you had mentioned it before, I was part of the demonstrations in Washington, D.C. that shut down the town. Mm-hmm. In '04, when I was campaigning for Kerry, there was a one-day strike in L.A. that put several corporations out of business. Why can't we organize a workers' day where no one shows up and shut down some of these corporations?
Because one of the main goals that the billionaires laid out in 1971 in the Powell memo and then in subsequent, organizing principles for think tanks, one of their main goals was to eliminate the power of the American middle class. The American middle class had gotten too strong, too uppity, too willing to talk back to the ownership class and the CEO class. And the people had, jobs with labor contracts where it was very difficult to fire them without the union fighting back. They had health insurance. They had, you send your kids to college for free or virtually free, all across the United States in the 1960s. Some of the best schools in the country you could go to, and they had to end that. And they did. It started with Reagan taking down the unions, starting with Patco, his first days in office, and has continued to this day. And we went from 1/3 of us being unionized to only 6% of us being unionized now. And the result of that is that people are terrified for their jobs. They are unwilling to lose their jobs because they'll literally lose their lives. More than 40% of Americans can't deal with a $500 hit.
I'm one of them.
So that's why general strikes don't work right now in the United States, and they do work in countries like France, where the vast majority of the workplace is A, unionized, and B, unionized in a way that you can't get fired if you engage in a strike.
I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is simply we don't need a union. We need to get together. Like the Doors said, you know, they got the guns, but we got the numbers.
Yeah.
If we organize as a group, and just like the women did against Trump and all this with the hats and all that stuff, if we just organize and say everybody who works at Amazon doesn't show up for a couple of days, that would shut most of the company down. They need cash flow. If everybody who worked at Walmart didn't show up for a couple of days, and they just organized it within their own company by themselves, each group, it would shut down each company because they don't have cash flow. They can't function.
Or you'd have a whole bunch of people.
Days a week.
Or you'd have a whole bunch of people who get fired, particularly the organizers. This is why we need unions.
I've done that. I've been
John.
fired.
Yeah, this is why we need unions. I mean, employees need some protections. Franklin Roosevelt recognized this in 33 or in 34 or 35 when the Wagner Act was passed, the National Labor Relations Act. And, this is why the Supreme Court has been taking apart the National Labor Relations Act, decision after decision after decision, ever since. And, if they get Kavanaugh on the court or any of these other hardcore right-wing, billionaire toady, Federalist Society drones, if they get any more of these people on the Supreme Court, like Roberts and Thomas and Scalia was, and Alito certainly is, any more of these guys, and it's game over for the United States, at least for a generation or so, unless the Democrats just overwhelmingly come in and can change the makeup of the Supreme Court. John, thank you for the call. I love the idea. I wish it would work. Free Speech TV is supported by your contributions, and I strongly encourage you during the pledge drives, or even not during the pledge drives, to call Free Speech TV at 877-378-8669 and make a contribution, support Free Speech TV. But that said, our program, the Thom Hartmann Program, what you're watching right now, is sustained by commercial advertising, and we're on commercial stations around the country. We run ads. They pay us for that. And one of the ways that you can support our program is by going to thomhartmann.com, our website, and clicking on the advertisements on that page for our sponsors and buying their products, supporting their products, or letting them know that you care about their products and that you support our show. That's thomhartmann.com, and click on the advertising there to support our program. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your supporting Free Speech TV by your ongoing, calling and supporting the fundraising drives, and we also would really appreciate if you go to thomhartmann.com.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And your thoughts and mine on all of this. Barbara in Andover, Ohio. Hey, Barbara, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. I watch you every day, and I learn more and more. Today, my question is this. If we had an election between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and he took it illegally,
right?
Why is not Hillary made president?
I agree, and this is the question that I was asking our author who was on in the Kathleen Hall Jameson, who is the director of the Annenberg School for Communications, and she's published this new book, Cyber War: How Russian Hackers and Trolls Helped Elect a President. And I think that America needs to have a conversation about what are we going to do. We have a president and a vice president, and I would say, frankly, because he won, he brought senators and congressmen along with him, and men and women along with him, and a legislature who were put into place illegitimately. That these people do not have the legitimacy to run this country. And we need a do-over on our election. And I don't know of any constitutional basis for that, and I don't know if Congress has the ability to simply declare that and call for it or something like that. But we need, and thank you, Barbara, for pointing this out, we need to have a conversation in America about what do we do now that we know that our president, we know that it's very likely, it's extremely likely, it's more likely than unlikely, that our president is only our president because of the involvement of a foreign country. This is a big deal. Robin in Kingston, Washington. Hey, Robin, what's up?
Hey, Tom, calling in here to kind of really flip the discussion. I actually think that there's something else going on behind the scenes that the Democrats and the left are not looking at. And here it is. To me, it's not getting Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court that is the big issue for them. It is holding the Senate in the upcoming elections, and that's what their main goal is. And I maintain that there's a very strong possibility that they put Kavanaugh up as a sacrificial lamb to do all of this, whatever it might be, and then get the Judicial Committee to vote in favor of him, and then have the senators go back home before the elections, and then they turn their back. And they've a select few senators in vulnerable districts to turn their back on Trump. And all of a sudden, Tom, these senators, Republican senators, are going to be going from the bad guys to the white knights, okay, coming in to save the country.
Right.
And I'll tell you who's going to fall for this, Tom. It's going to be portions of the 61% of the college-educated white woman. They're going to say, oh, they've really learned something, then moved ahead.
Yeah, it
all
was 53%.
The indicators are there. All of the indicators are there, Tom. All of it.
That's entirely possible, Robin. That's entirely possible. It's a great theory, and I wouldn't characterize it as a conspiracy theory in a way to denigrate it. I think you may definitely be onto something. Roy in Greensboro, North Carolina. Hey, Roy, what's up?
Tom, my hero, you have touched on it several times today how much Kavanaugh is anti-labor and anti-consumer. This sex assault stuff it seems to me almost like a diversion.
Yeah.
He is the worst in my lifetime.
I agree, and we're not talking about these issues. Just his dissent in SeaWorld alone, where he invented this whole theory that if you're in the entertainment industry, you can't be regulated by OSHA. He was the only judge who said this. The rest of them actually in the decision called out his dissent and pointed out in a 4-point rebuttal how ridiculous the points he was making, how he was twisting precedent and law to fit his worldview that government should not be able to protect employees.
Yep, several people were murdered. It wasn't just one for not taking simple safety measures.
Yes.
And this is like buddy thing. Kavanaugh ruled on picketers at Trump's casinos. This should almost
I didn't know that.
Kavanaugh did judicial activism on 2 consumer things that are big. Elizabeth Warren's thing, the consumer financial,
CPFB, yeah.
And it was overturned. Now, when a judge's stuff is overturned, that indicates right there there's something wrong.
Oh, he's been on the short end of the stick on a lot of decisions in the D.C. circuit.
Yeah. And how about the meat processing for consumers? It's not that old under Obama.
I'm with you. Roy, I want to get one more call in, but spot on. Mary in Chicago, we have just a minute. Mary, it's yours.
Oh, hi, Tom. I'm a longtime listener.
Thank you.
I'm just getting kind of sick of the Democrats taking the higher road. When will they get angry and take the offense on Trump? I swear, I watch a lot of MSNBC and listen, and it's like, it's kind of like there's nothing we can do.
Right.
It's just going to happen.
Yeah, the Democrats come on and say, our friends across the aisle, whereas the Republicans come on and they say those Democrat politicians, they won't even spell out the name of the party.
I actually appreciate Michael Avenatti coming out and getting angry.
Yeah.
And being in front of everyone.
Oh, he's got a hell of a fan club going now as a result of it.
I feel like the Democrats want us to do all the legwork while they sit back and
I think there's a lot of Democrats who are stepping up and fighting, Mary, and the Progressive Caucus is leading that charge. But, I agree, we need a little more guts, although it's kind of a sexist term, for lack of it. But anyhow, thanks so much for being with us today. We will be back tomorrow as this show continues, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about what's going on in D.C. right now. It's going to be a fascinating day tomorrow. And in the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
From UN headquarters.